Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Hello, Michael.
Hello,
We're
Joe.
rolling. What's going on, buddy? Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Thanks for coming down here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
What made you decide to write about comfort? Isn't comfort a good thing, Michael? What is going on?
Well,
You have a problem with comfort? The comfort crisis? Is it really a crisis?
I argue that it is a crisis. One, I don't have a problem with comfort. I do have a problem with always being comfortable, always leaning into comfort, which is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
All right, so if you think of the average person's daily life, they wake up in the soft bed, temperature-controlled home. They shuffle over to the microwave a breakfast burrito, right, that came in from who knows where and is made with who knows what. And then it's like, I go to work, I drive to work, I sit behind this screen all day. I don't have to move at all or put any effort into this day, and then it's back to bed in front of the TV, and you just rinse and repeat that. At no point in daily life, I would argue, are people really challenged or really uncomfortable anymore, like we were in our past.
Some people, of course.
Some
right?
people.
There's David Goggins is still alive and well.
Yes, David Goggins is
He's
still
running
alive
right now.
And so he's like the type of person, you see what happens when you start to push against that, right? When you kind of have this moment where you go, maybe I'm a little too comfortable, and you start to sort of investigate, okay, what is it with discomfort? How can I get into some discomfort, and what can that do for me? And then at the extreme end of that is Goggins. Who,
Yeah. Well, it's for folks that just, like, say if you work in an office and this is how you make a living and you have to do that commute and there's no other options and this is what you do. Like, for them to hear this, they're like, yeah, okay, so what? What now?
Well, I mean, the answer is not to totally overhaul your lifestyle, right? I mean, we have amazing lives right now. The fact that we don't have to go out and hunt for food or put physical effort into every day is great. But at the same time, I think, and I argue in the book, The Comfort Crisis, that we need these moments that push back at us, and we need to sort of investigate these discomforts that we used to face in our evolutionary past. So, for example, 2, that's the percent of people who take the stairs when there's the choice
2%?
of 2% people who take the stairs when there's a choice of an escalator. 70% of people, more than 70% now, are overweight or obese. Only 20% of only 20% of eating is actually driven by physiological hunger. 80% of it is just, I'm bored. It's noon, I guess I'll eat, or I'm stressed out, right? We exercise more. We exercise 14 times less than our ancestors nowadays. So
Our ancestors just by virtue of trying to survive, you mean?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they didn't exercise, right? Like our hunter-gatherer,
Yes.
they never did chin-ups. Or,
Exactly. That was life to them.
Yeah, they just were
Exactly.
trying to get by.
Yeah, and we spend 95% of our time indoors as well. And we know that there's benefits to getting out and moving more. We know there's benefits to being outside. We also know that there's benefits to truly being challenged in life. It's like I said before, you can basically never be challenged as you go through life in a real sort of fundamental way, and you'll probably have a decent life. But, if you think about potential and human potential, let's say that human potential is this big circle around us, right? Now, most of us live in this sort of dinner plate-sized place. We never go out and explore the edges of our potential by trying to get uncomfortable and doing things that are maybe a little outside of our comfort zone. We can just kind of exist in this sort of soft space that we've created for ourselves right now. And of course, there are people who get out and, into those edges, like the Goggins of the world, like the Cam Hanes of the world. But I think most people don't really go out and see what they're capable of.
Now, I don't think anybody's going to push back against this book.
You know?
No, I don't. Which it creates kind of a dilemma for you. Is there comfort in just writing about discomfort, right? Is there a debate here? Because I don't think there is. I mean, I think what you're saying is like irrefutable. I don't think anybody can say, well, there's nothing wrong with being sedentary and having your body turn into jello. Well, there's nothing wrong with living a boring life with no stress at all and well, stress, but mental stress. No actual physical adversity to overcome, which stresses out the body but actually relaxes the mind, which is that's what people are missing, right? That's when you actually physically exert yourself, it actually calms the mind. And I think there's probably a direct correlation, although I haven't done any studies. I would imagine there's a direct correlation between physical inactivity and mental depression. I would have to imagine that there's at least some crossover there.
Yeah, there absolutely is. I think that exercise, the studies show, it grows the hippocampus, which is an area that tends to be shrunken in people who have depression. So this is why the APA now advocates that psychiatrists recommend exercise to a lot of their patients. But I think to get back to your question of, am I going to have any pushback?
Right. Is there any pushback?
And am I staying within my comfort zone by having this argument? So the way that I reported this book is I spent more than a month hunting with Donnie Vincent in the Arctic backcountry.
Shout out to Johnny Vincent, you handsome bastard.
Yeah.
We were talking about you earlier.
Handsome, rugged bastard. For people who don't know him, he's a backcountry bow hunter and filmmaker. He goes out into, super extreme, off-the-grid areas. And
He's. We were saying he's controversial, but not for any real reason. He's controversial because he doesn't wear camo, and he wears like a lot of wool.
He looks good in the wild.
It does. Yeah, he looks like a fucking model for some J. Crew catalog out there wandering around. Would be like an Abercrombie and Fitch. Which I didn't know used to be like a little offside here, was a company that sold like fly fishing and outdoor stuff. Now it's like these weird young models, really young. There's Donnie Vincent. Look at that rugged, handsome bastard.
Yeah, he's
Look at him. Look at him.
He looks like he's walking out of a Filson catalog.
He does.
Right there.
Completely.
Good dude. Yeah, love that guy.
Very good guy. Abercrombie and Fitch, like now when you go there, they spray that fucking horrible scent in the place. Do they still do that COVID wise? Maybe it's bad for COVID, kills COVID.
I would imagine it kills it. Yeah.
It kills everything.
I had a friend who worked there, and she said like every 20 minutes we have to do like 20 sprays. There's some like very specific
crazy
number.
It stinks in there. But that used to be a company that made outdoor stuff for like people who wanted to go fly fishing.
Yeah.
And now it's like they look like they're like 18 models in the poses. They're all like real slender and they look like real slinky. Pull up a photo of like Abercrombie and Fitch models.
They were the ones that would put the shirtless dudes out at their store in New York, right?
Actual shirtless dudes?
Actual shirtless dudes would be on the street. In their
really?
Abercrombie jeans, yeah. It was.
I was just looking it up though. Even when it was a hunting company back in 1900, it started in Manhattan.
Really?
So
there you go.
I mean, it was. But
1900 in Manhattan, like everybody hunted back then. Like you would go up to the Poconos and shit, and people would leave. So these guys were like wandering around New York City with no shirts on.
Yeah,
looking good, boys. Go back to that photo.
Which one?
The one that you just showed. The guys out there? No, the other one?
That one?
Yeah. Look at the guy on the far right. Bro, you're about to show your cock. This is ridiculous. It's all dick root, right? You're showing the dick root. So what was the purpose of this? Like to get people... They're wearing flip-flops too? Flip-flops, jeans, no shirt, and an open jacket.
It's probably like January too, right?
Yeah, probably cold as shit. And they're all flexing constantly. Look at them.
There you go. Tough work if you can get it.
Well, you're dealing from a very small sample pool to be able to be that guy. I mean, these guys all have like 7% body fat. But it used to be an outdoor company. That was like what they sold. They sold like canoes and shit, I think. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I saw like an old catalog, right?
Yeah.
Like fly fishing gear and stuff.
Yeah. Outerwear, kind of that old school cool stuff, a lot of canvas, like waxed.
Yeah, look at this. Abercrombie and Fitch, yeah. Canoe, guys shooting ducks out of a canoe.
Why don't they put those guys out in Manhattan on the street? I would much rather buy from them.
Because people would go back to Texas.
Is that a gun?
Get out of here. We don't need guns around here. But they do. Meanwhile, they do. There was a mass shooting in Times Square yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
Anyway, back to this pushback against your book. You're writing about something that pretty much most people agree.
Yeah, I think. But it's like, do we really know how to get back into discomfort? And like, in the book, I argue that there are a handful of fundamental discomforts that we lost over time as the world became more comfortable.
Okay.
So a few of the important ones are that we don't take on these big epic challenges in nature like we used to. So for example, traditional rites of passage, all totally gone.
Yeah.
In the past, we would send young people out to do some trial. And the idea was that, like, hey, you're at stage 1 of life right now, but we need you to get to stage 2 so you can be a better contributor to the tribe. And so you can almost become a new, more confident, capable person.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we're going to send you out in the wild to do any number of things. It depends on, what the culture was. So, for example, the Maasai, they would send young warriors out to hunt lions with a spear. And if you killed a lion, then you would officially transition into a warrior. And, in that space, that trying middle ground, that's where you learn a lot about yourself and your potential. And by going through something like that, you come out on the other side an improved person. We've totally lost that. And there's all kinds of different rites of passage throughout time. They're essentially what Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey. There's this, typical archetype of, leave comfort of home, go into this trying, challenging, uncomfortable middle ground, come out the other end, and you've learned something about yourself and evolved. That's gone. And you think about young people today, like, how often are they challenged?
Right.
You start to see helicopter parenting come in about 1990 is when it started, because there was all this media around kidnappings. So parents wouldn't let their kids outside go to the playground.
Oh, is that really what caused that stuff?
It was a bunch of media around kidnapping, which kidnapping was not a big phenomenon, right? But it just got exploded because it's
a big phenomenon if someone kidnaps your kid.
Yeah.
And it did happen.
Yeah, it did.
That's
It
the
definitely
problem.
did happen.
It's like,
but if you look
it
at
becomes a story.
Exactly. If you look at the statistics, like your kid is more likely to get hurt in a lot of other different ways than that. But so that blows up. Kids start to get helicopter parented. Challenge gets removed out of their lives. Now we've kind of moved on to snowplow parenting, right?
What's snowplow parenting?
It's even worse. So
worse than helicopter parenting?
You just push all the challenge out of your kid's life. So a good example of this would be the parents who paid to get their kids into those challenging schools.
Yeah.
So now you start to see kids who were born after 1990 have much higher rates of mental health problems like anxiety and depression, because they essentially have no armor. Like, you've never really been challenged. So when you get into a classroom or whatever it is and someone challenges your idea, you have no idea how to deal with that. That becomes really anxiety inducing. And there's obviously a lot of different reasons why these rates of anxiety have risen. There's also a lot of time on smartphones, but that kind of goes back into that. It's like, if I don't get enough likes on this Instagram page, it's like, that is a major shot, Yeah,
it's more than that, I think. I think Jonathan Haidt's work points to bullying, particularly for girls. It seems to be for girls, social media is like, but Jordan Peterson talked about this, that men are more aggressive physically, but women are more aggressive in terms of reputation destruction.
Yeah.
And they attack other girls on social media. I've seen it. It is fucking ruthless. I've seen like teenage girls go after other teenage girls. It's so awful.
Yeah.
The things they say to each other are so awful. And it leads to way higher rates of suicide, depression, self-harm. And there's a direct spike that it lines up exactly with the iPhone. Mm-hmm. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
It's like the iPhone and having social media on your phone, because like in the MySpace days, people were using computers, right? Like MySpace was just like, when people were using that, they were just posting things. They weren't necessarily attacking each other.
Yeah.
They didn't realize how to attack each other until it was on their phone.
It was like, here's this emo band I like. Listen to that. That was what MySpace was all about.
It was about, and comedians, a lot of comedians use it to promote, like Dane Cook became famous through MySpace. That's how he became.
That's cool.
Yeah, they use it to promote themselves, but something about it being on the phone, and then something about like Facebook, right? Like, where you could post pictures, look at this stupid bitch, and she did this, and she stole my boyfriend, she's a slut, and then all the other girls pile on, and it's just devastating for these kids. It's like horrific.
Yeah, it is terrible. And so this is another thing that I point out in the book, is that we're never bored anymore. So as we evolved, boredom is this evolutionary discomfort that basically told us, whatever you're spending your time on right now, it's not an efficient use of your time. So go find something else. Now, in the past, this would be like, let's say you're picking berries from a bush. You've picked the easiest to pick ones. Well, if we didn't have this cue of boredom, we'd be like reaching into the very back for the berries that are hard to pick, but they become successively harder to pick because we've picked all these different ones, right? boredom would kick on and be like, hey, your return on your time invested has worn thin. Move on to another bush, right? But nowadays, with this influx of media we have, people spend 11 hours a day engaging with digital media.
Is that real?
Yeah, 11, and that's the average. So
What?
you want to hear an even crazier thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a professor at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and one of the classes I teach is an intro class. So it's got about 150 students, and it's a media class I teach in the journalism department. First day of class, I'll talk about how things have changed with media. You know, it's like we lived 2.5 million years with no media in our lives, and now it's become our lives. And then I will ask, all right, I want everyone to pull out your phone right now. I want you to look at your screen time. Tell me how much you have. Who thinks they have the highest? And we'll start to go through people. I've had people, 7 hours, 45 minutes, 8 hours, 50 minutes, 9 hours, 16 minutes. It's like, that's your entire day, all on that cell phone, right? So nowadays, when we have this discomfort of boredom kick in, we have a super easy escape from it, right? We're not forced to be like, okay, what am I doing with my time? Is there something better I could be doing? We just pull out our phone. And you see this, right? Anytime people have one moment of solitude or inactivity, it's like, oh, might as well just check my phone.
It's brutal when you see people on dates.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
not even talking to each other. They're just looking at each other's phones.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
People at dinner. It's like,
Yeah. It's like you're in front of an actual person.
Yeah.
And you prefer to communicate in digital with someone who's not even there.
Totally. And what's interesting about boredom is oftentimes when boredom would kick on, we would go inward, sort of mind wander. And mind wandering, it gives your brain some time to like reset and revive. Whereas anytime you're focused on the outside world, your brain is actively processing information. So this is kind of like in the book, I compare it to lifting a weight. When you're having a conversation, looking at your phone, watching a screen, whatever you're doing, if you're focusing on the outside world, your brain is working and it's lifting. When you go inward, your brain goes into this default mode network, which is like a rest period, right? So now, because every time we're bored, we just pull out that screen and focus more, our brains are just constantly being worked and overworked and overworked. And this is associated with just burnout, anxiety, etc.
Yeah, there's some real benefits to boredom in terms of creativity as well. Like,
Oh, totally.
boredom is really good for coming up with new ideas.
Yeah, and there's actually research behind this. They've done studies where they'll have people watch something really boring, like a video of people folding laundry, just like they bore the shit out of these participants, and then they have them come up with take these different creativity tests that scientists use, and the people who were bored come up with better solutions and responses than the people who had been stimulated the whole time. And you think about this, I mean, just in terms of anecdotes from creators, it's like you need time to just sit and be with yourself and have these weird ideas bubble to the surface. If you never have that, you're not letting the weird stuff come out, I mean, do you experience this when you're trying to think of stuff in your own work?
Yeah, you have to have discomfort. The worst thing that could ever happen to me if I'm writing is to just open the browser and start, let me just Google this real quick and see. It's like I'll play little games with myself. Like I'll be in the middle of writing. I'm like, what does that mean really? And then I'll Google it and like, shut the fuck up and get back to work.
Yeah.
Because like I'm just being distracted. I'm just distracting myself. And sometimes I'll allow myself a couple of minutes of distraction before I get mad. But really I shouldn't allow myself any. I should just keep working. And sometimes people say, I can't write. I just stare at the screen and nothing comes out. I'm like, yeah, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
That's how it works, man. You're supposed to fucking stare at the screen.
Yeah.
And then you just write some nonsense and eventually something good will come out of that.
Yeah.
But if you just bail because you don't like the staring at the screen part and nothing's coming out, guess what? You're never going to write anything.
Exactly.
Congratulations. So then you'll be at the whim of whatever random spontaneous creativity just pops into your head throughout the day.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll get some and sometimes you won't.
Yeah.
But Pressfield talks about that in The War of Art. Have you read that book?
I haven't read that book, but I've heard about it.
It's a very small book, but it's really good. It's great for writers. And he's basically says, he talks about the muse as if the muse is a real thing. And he's like, treat it like it's a real thing. Treat it like you're a professional and you're there to summon the muse. And if you just show up every day and do that work, it will come. It will come to you and it will bestow upon you these creative ideas. But if you don't do that, if you don't sit down and be uncomfortable rather, it won't happen. And in this day and age, like you said, we're so accustomed to having any boredom alleviated by our phone.
Yeah. So in the book, too, I talk about, you hear all this stuff that's like, break up with your phone, less time on your phone. Here are 1,000 different ways to use your phone less. Yes, that is important. But the problem is a lot of times when people go, okay, I'm going to use my phone less. So they put their phone in, a safe or whatever weird habit they've developed. But then they go watch Netflix. It's like your brain doesn't know the damn difference between the screen on your phone and the screen on your TV. The point is that you need to remove yourself from this outside media that's totally just weaved its way into your life, like
stimulating you with nothing.
Yeah, the switch from phone to Netflix is like going, I'm quitting smoking, but I'm gonna go buy some Red Man and just pack that in real hard,
Yeah,
same thing.
Yeah. When you went with Donnie, you guys went to the Arctic.
We did.
33 days. Is that what you did up there? And what did you do while you're up there?
So we were hunting caribou. And we were on a caribou hunt.
That's a dangerous hunt.
The Arctic is an extreme place.
It's dangerous in that you get dropped off, right? Did you get float planed in there?
No. Well, it was a plane.
Bush plane?
Bush plane, tiny plane, picks you up. We got ferried. So it was me, Donnie, and his cameraman, William Altman, who's a great dude. And,
satellite phone?
Donnie had a GPS thing in order to talk to the pilot.
Text thing?
Yeah, text thing.
Boy.
Yeah.
If that breaks, you're fucked.
If that breaks, you are indeed fucked, my man.
And there's grizzlies out there too.
Yeah, we saw some grizzlies.
Fun.
Yeah, big animals. So at one point, we leave Kotzebue first. Me and William are in this plane that's like a 3-seater.
How many flights did it take to get out there?
2.
Just 2?
So we get in the sort of small plane. It drops me and William off. Then the smaller plane comes along. It picks up William.
But you had to take a small plane to get there too, though, right? Like how many planes did it take you to get to where you were going?
From Las Vegas to the middle of nowhere?
Yeah.
1, 2, 5.
5 planes.
5.
Altogether.
Successively smaller. So that's what's interesting, right? It's like if you want to leave the built environment, you're getting on big plane to medium plane to little plane to really little plane to why the fuck am I in this size plane?
To how much do you weigh? How much do your shoes weigh? Yeah.
Totally.
You got to weigh your gear.
Yeah. Weighed our gear. So I get left out there, right? Because the super small plane comes and picks up
one at a time.
William. Yeah, one at a time.
Did you have a rifle?
No, I'm standing there, and there's clods of grizzly poop surrounding me, and I'm just like,
you with a rifle?
I'm just like,
oh my god.
Fuck. Well, here's the thing, and we can get into this, but Donnie's like, fucking bears or whatever,
Donnie's too comfortable.
Oh yeah. But it was also interesting because I'm standing out there, and it's like, I have never been this alone in my entire life.
Oh yeah, it's
right?
real alone.
So think about it. There's no one around me for miles and miles. My cell phone doesn't work because today we're increasingly, even when we think we're alone, we're with people through our cell phones, through text messages, through whatever. And there's just like nothing. And you start to kind of get at first I'm like, man, this is dangerous. Like I did not like it at all. But then, sort of as time went on, it's like, actually, this is kind of interesting to be totally removed from society because now all of a sudden it's like we have all these social narratives of like, how do we act? What do we do? What do we do as humans? And they're totally removed. And it's just like, wow.
How long were you out there, just you?
Probably 2-3 hours. 4 hours, probably.
See, a real mountain man's laughing at you right now. They're like, this fucking pussy.
Yeah, totally.
Can't be alone for 3 hours.
As they should.
Yeah. Do you know who Dick Prenicky is?
Yes.
Did you watch any of those videos?
Total badass.
Amazing videos, too.
Unbelievable.
Like, interesting. Like, his life was really, I want to say he was like a machinist or something like that. Like, he had a normal life. I believe that's what it was. I think he was a machinist. And he got injured. And I think he lost some of his vision in one of his eyes because of this injury. And the injury I hope I'm not fucking this up, is one of the things that motivated him to decide to move to the woods and build a cabin and film and document it all completely by himself.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me.
I remember seeing the documentaries, and like he made this like little key latch on his door. I mean, he made
Pull
this
up
cabin.
some of the videos on Dick Prenicky.
He makes this cabin out of just stuff that he finds out in the wild, right?
Yeah.
But like he had it almost fashioned like a normal home from the 50s, and you're like, how did you figure out all this shit, man? Like,
yeah, this is his place. His place is beautiful too. It's such a sweet looking little cabin. I mean, look, he's got a gold pan out there in the front, and he's got snowshoes hanging from the side of it. I mean, it's like
super cool.
Yeah, and he built all that himself. He built everything. I mean, he even built his own tools. He brought part of the tools with him, like whatever he would need, like for sure. But the videos are pretty crazy. Like you see him out there, and it's just, again, this is like, I don't remember what years. It says 77. One Man's Alaska, 1977. So he filmed all this and made these videos. Yeah, you could see how he'd made tools and all sorts of different things.
Super cool.
Yeah, but he made his own like canoes and shit. But he filmed all this because he knew that what he was doing was pretty extraordinary. Look how little what is that? Like probably like a shed where he keeps his food or something like that. And went out there once, I believe, and then just decided that that was where he was going to live, and was out there with no contact with people at all for long periods of time. Go to that last one that you were looking at, Jamie.
Yeah, there's a documentary that
second one, right? The second one down. Yeah, that one right there. Okay, just play the video, because it's this is the one I've seen. Was one of the ones I've seen, but it goes into great depth about how he built his cabin and like what his history was, and that he just became obsessed with the idea of being in nature and how much he loved it. And he lived there until he was in his 80s, and then went to stay with his brother.
Yeah,
because his health was failing, and then eventually, he lived the last days of his life, I think, in Washington State. But here it shows him making various tools. Like he's got like a wood auger to make a hammer with, and makes a wooden mallet, and did the whole deal. Like he made everything.
Look at that.
But he got just this tremendous satisfaction, and talked about the tremendous satisfaction he got from just being allowed to live this subsistence life.
Yeah.
Have you seen these videos on YouTube? There are people who are doing this similar thing where they'll show themselves make an entire log cabin.
Yeah,
like
I have
in
seen
the
some
woods,
of them. Yeah,
or like dig a hole and make a pool underwater.
Well, that was the whole appeal of that show, Life Below Zero. It's like those folks that would live up there and live that subsistence life. But it's like we're all aware that there's this immense gravity that comes from the digital world. It's immense. It's just constantly pulling you in with new content and new distractions, and this is one of them. This fucking thing that you and I are on. It's ironic. This is one of the we're talking shit about what we actually are doing right now. But they pull you. They pull you. And we all know that it's probably not the best way to live, but it's so hard to break the addiction.
I mean, it's amazing, right? It's amazing that I can pull up a podcast and listen to almost whoever I want, their thoughts, and get these new ideas. But at the same time, it's like, if that's all you're spending your time doing, there's some downsides. We need to offset it. That I don't necessarily think the answer is to go live in the woods in Alaska for the rest of your life. Although that'd be pretty cool if you did. More power to you. But figuring out like how do we balance this all and have these moments where we have, solitude, go more inward, and aren't as stimulated. So one thing that, after I'm standing out there in solitude, when I get home, I start researching, what are the benefits of solitude? Because we know that the data shows that being lonely isn't good for us, but there's the difference between loneliness and solitude. Like solitude is electing to be by yourself and using that time for sort of introspection. And the scientists that I talked to, they said, yeah, you really need this, because a lot of times people are more conductor circuits, and they don't do well when they're alone at all. This is part of the reason we have such a loneliness problem. But if you can like build this capacity to be alone, they call it, Like that can serve you well in the long time, and it also breeds deeper thinking and creativity. I mean, it's like there's a reason that thousands of years of religious tradition, they have people who go and spend this time alone out in nature. I mean, Jesus was in the desert for 40 days. The Buddha exited the palace gates, and spent a bunch of time alone and in solitude. Even Abraham Lincoln used solitude and for a lot of his writing and stuff like that. And I feel like people don't have that as much anymore.
Very little. And society discourages this kind of solitude. Society encourages you to be constantly connected, and the more it can get you connected, the more it can extract revenue from you.
Yeah. And we often frame it as a negative. I mean, like, think of what we do with kids who misbehave. We put them in timeout. Think of what we do to prisoners who misbehave. Solitary confinement. So we framed it as a negative, but it isn't necessarily a negative.
It's a different kind of solitude, though, obviously, right? You heard about this Utah lady? She was just eating grass and moss. She disappeared for 5 months, and they thought she was dead, and they found her camping.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think she's doing well. I don't think this is a good example. I think this lady's kind of crazy.
I just saw that headline and was just, you guys are saying these words.
Yeah, meanwhile,
really,
I'm just talking shit out of a headline I read, too. Because it was like the headline I said, she was surviving off moss and grass. I'm like, all right, this lady might have went
this
crazy.
says she was released from the hospital. So, I don't know.
She's
Mental
out.
health hospital?
I think so. They took her in for evaluations is what I read, but people, I wish she just wanted to be alone.
Isn't that funny? Like, they find you camping, they're like, this is not good.
Yeah. The hell's wrong with you?
Make sure that you're okay mentally.
Yeah.
Why aren't you in an apartment where you could hear people scream?
Yeah, exactly.
Why aren't you eating fast food? What are you doing eating moss?
Yeah.
You crazy bitch.
Totally.
Yeah. Or you're living in Austin and you're just camping on Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be that as well.
When you guys were up there, did you have a set amount of time? Did 33 days, was that what you agreed upon before you went out there? Was there a reason for that?
We just thought, Donnie was just like, hey, I'm going up for more than a month. You want to come along? I'm like, yeah,
Why
sure.
was he going
Let's
for
do it.
that long?
It's just what he does for work. He embeds himself in these places for long periods of time and does these films. So he's a good person to go with. I'll tell you that much. I mean,
sure.
He knows what he's doing up there, and he's I don't know. He's one of those dudes who's kind of unflappable in situations like that. Like, for example, this was I think our first or second night. We had this Kafaru teepee, and we're very, very intelligent people. I want you to know this first of all. And we pitched this thing on this like kind of knob because the winds are coming in from a direction where like, oh, it's going to be protected, and then we'll move it when the winds shift in a couple days. Well, the winds shift overnight. I wake up and there's just like this pop, 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 pop of the fabric, and the winds just keep coming, get faster and faster overnight, and eventually by morning, I mean, they're like 70-mile-an-hour gusts, and I'm just like, holy shit, we're gonna lose this thing. And then like, what do we do after that? Like, it's just crazy and it's freezing, And
you didn't bring a tent. You just brought one of those little
that
tarps?
teepee. The teepee.
That was it?
Yeah.
How come you guys didn't bring an actual tent?
Well, if we needed one, we could. We had like emergency blankets and that stuff, and Donnie could have messaged to the pilot to try and bring us something. But yeah, and he's just like, okay, we're gonna have to do. He's like, this is bad. We're gonna have to do a takedown. Get all your shit ready, get it in your bag, and it's just like he just knows exactly what to do. Whereas I'm like, oh my god, it's bad.
We should probably explain to people the terrain.
Yeah. So it's these mountains that they're not super jagged. They're very old, so they've kind of been worn by time, and the tundra is the absolute worst thing to walk on in the world. So I describe it as, think of like a Dr. Seuss book. I kind of picture it like that, where it's like this big mattress that's covered in basketballs. I like to think about it like that. So the basketballs are these things called tundra tussocks, which are these big thing, dense pieces of grass. It's like wound up grass. And then the mattress in between them is kind of like muck and shale and frozen ground. So walking on this, you're like, do I step on this super soft stuff that's hard to, get your bearings on? It's kind of like almost beach sand, the same idea. Or do I like step on these tussocks that are super awkward? It's like having to walk anywhere I mean, like 1 mile out there is like 5 anywhere else. It's just such a bitch to walk on.
Which did you choose, the soft stop or the tussocks?
Oh man, I never really.
Did you go back and forth?
Yeah, I would go back and forth.
Did you ask Donnie what he does?
I can't remember if I did. I don't know if he would have known either because he was looking like an idiot when he was walking as well.
So there's not much you can do to be comfortable as you're walking.
No.
Yeah.
Occasionally you'll find some game trails, and those can be good. They're kind of, a little bit more worn. Oftentimes they're along mountain faces, though, and, the animals on 4 legs are a bit more sure-footed than we are on our shitty 2 legs, so all of a sudden you're slipping because of shale. So,
yeah.
It's
And so how many miles did you have to traverse on this stuff?
some days we would probably our longest day was maybe 15 total in a day. Yeah, and we had one day we had seen this herd, and so we're kind of chasing them more or less, and we ended up 7-ish miles from camp and decided we needed to head back to the teepee now. And it was so freaking cold. It was like 0 out, and we've got this long march across the tundra, and part of what we had to go through then was like this sort of frozen swamp, so sometimes your foot would break through into this sort of moving water. And it was one of those where I'm like, why the hell am I out here? What am I doing? Like, this is stupid,
What day was this?
This was a ways into it. I don't know, maybe like 15, something like that.
What if you guys had been successful early? Like, what if you ran into a herd like on the 2nd or 3rd day?
Then we wouldn't have been so damn hungry.
But you were going to stay out there no matter what.
Yeah, we were going to stay out there no matter what. Yeah, because Donnie, he wants footage, and I signed on because I wanted to experience that, so we would have stayed out there.
Now, did you guys have a lot of supplies in terms of food, or were you living off your back?
We were mostly living off our back, yeah.
So you had a large backpack.
Yeah, heavy
is
backpack.
Quite heavy.
Filled with Mountain House. Yeah, You've probably had that.
Yeah.
Delicious, delicious gruel.
Well, there's actually some companies that make good versions of that now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is Chad Mendes' company called? Is it Peak? Peak Fitness or Peak Fuel? Is that what his is called? My friend Chad Mendes, he's a former UFC fighter who's a hunter as well.
Okay.
He's got a really good company that
Peak Refuel.
Peak Refuel. His stuff is excellent, but it's
I'll have
really
to-
healthy stuff. Like, their companies are making it now where they're making it with like much more healthy ingredients, no trans fats, no bullshit and preservatives,
Yeah.
and they're just dehydrating everything. Yeah,
Well, that looks good. I could have used that.
yeah. There's other companies, and
The new-
nothing wrong with Mountain House if you're hungry.
Yeah.
It's okay, but my God, the gas.
Yeah.
The gas it's outstanding.
And there's no fiber in that, so
Yeah, and
over
some
time
of them,
that starts to
become an issue.
present a problem.
Well, that's a problem anyway when you're shitting on a tussock.
Yeah.
Because you have to just squat and drop, right?
Right. So we think about all the ways that we've removed activity from our lives. I mean, even think about that. It used
Yeah.
to be that, like, if you needed to shit, you're going to have to hold a squat for a minute there, buddy.
Right.
And having to go out and do that, it was like, oh, man. Like, it was just kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess we now sit on these nice porcelain toilets.
And you have to make sure you don't shit into your pants.
You have to do that. That is helpful.
Did you bathe rather? Did you get in a stream? Like, how did you clean yourself? while you were
No,
there?
we just
Nothing.
No.
Yeah.
Which is interesting coming from a world of, so I was there pre-COVID. So it was interesting coming from a world of Purell and
Yeah.
shower 2 a day, and now it's even more so for good reason, but there's also there's benefits to being dirty, especially if it's outside dirtiness, not like indoor dirtiness, like raw chicken and other people's germs. But
What's the benefits?
So when you look at cultures who live outside and do a lot of things outside, they tend to have a lot better gut health than we do. So one of the hunter-gatherer tribes that's been studied is the Hadza in Tanzania. And they did this one study where they compared poop, because that's how you figure out gut health, from Westerners and the Hadza tribe. And the Hadza have way more different types of gut bacteria, and they also have these ones that we don't have. So they have more of it, and they have more variety of it. Now, they don't get stomach issues, basically. They don't get colon cancer, they don't get rectal cancer, and they don't get things like Crohn's and colitis. Meanwhile, in the West, these are increasing problems, especially for younger people, and they think this is because we've completely sanitized our lives, more or less. We never get dirty, and we spend less time outside. So when we figured out that germs are bad and can cause disease, it's like, yes, but the amount of germs that cause disease relative to all the germs out there is a very small percentage, but we kind of just went ahead and killed all the germs we could, and so this has given us less of a defense and given us less variety in our guts that can improve our gut health.
Yeah, my friend David Cho, he's an artist. He's a very famous artist. He got really rich. Was it Google that he painted their lobby? Facebook? He painted their lobby. Guy. Yeah, and they gave him shares of the company back when it was nothing. And he's worth like $100 million or more, some crazy number, right? Like, it's preposterous amounts of cash.
Yeah, it's a good gig.
And he just does whatever he wants. Mostly he does art. Okay. He does a lot of painting and a lot of weird creative endeavors, but he decided to live with the Hadza for a while.
Did he really?
Yeah, and so he went there, and they were like hunting baboons.
Yeah.
They eat a lot of baboons, apparently, which is wild. And he explained, what it was like being out there.
What did he say about it?
It was really intense. He has some pretty amazing photographs from the experience, but, it's just a real reality check of what it means to be alive and what it means to try to thrive and survive in a subsistence lifestyle in a camp filled with people who've been doing this their entire life, and they allow you in, and they do that occasionally with Westerners. They'll allow you to come with them. And he was just like, God, it was like, realized how like out of shape he was, how soft he was in comparison to them, and how difficult their life is, and just it puts into perspective how many things you take for granted.
Oh, we totally take so many things for granted. I mean, when we got back, the first thing we did is we're in this airport in Kotzebue, and the airport is like a shed, a big shed more or less, right? But it has running heated water, and so I go in and I pee, and I get to the faucet, and I'm like, it hits me. It's like, holy shit, this is running water. Turn it on hot, and it's just like, I had the biggest shit-eating grin on my face from that hot water. It was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Yeah. Because out there, anytime we needed water, it's like we got to hike down to a stream, fill up these water bags, hike them back up to camp, and it's everything is effortful. So having these moments where you get out of that, sort of comfort zone that we're used to, it helps you become a lot more appreciative of everything that we have. We had another one when I was just telling you we had to go back out across, back through the tundra to get back to the teepee that one night. That was one of those where, it hit me. If we would have quit, like, you can't quit. You have to just keep going, because if you stay out there overnight, that's a lot more dangerous than just putting one foot in front of the other and making it back. And, before I went up to Alaska, like, for example, my wife and I, we go to this restaurant all the time, and the food is amazing, but the service is not quite there. And before I get to Alaska, like, I would just sit there as we're waiting, being like, oh God, this place is so mismanaged. Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Just can't you get your shit together? Can't you just refill that person's water? Like, move people out in a normal way. All these complaints are going through my mind, right? Yeah. So then I get back, and we go to that restaurant. And I think back to getting back to that teepee after that long haul and having like shitty mountain house dinner and being freezing cold. And I can stand there and be like, man, this isn't bad at all. You guys do what you need to do. I'm about to eat 2,000 calories, and I'm warm, and I'm happy, and this is awesome.
All you have to do is point at the thing on the menu that you'd like.
Yes, exactly.
And tell them, the T-bone, please.
Yes.
And they come and bring it.
Totally. And so it makes you so much more appreciative, And it also sort of made me less of an asshole, because once you're appreciative, you're slightly less of a nitpicky person, which, imagine if we could put 5% less of an asshole out at scale for everyone.
My friend Dan Doty actually does that with young troubled men. He takes them on these experiences in the woods. This sort of rites of passage type deal. Like a lot of like young guys, particularly ones from affluent households who really don't have any challenges in their life, and he takes them and has them like live in the woods with him for like weeks and weeks at a time.
Wow.
He takes them on these camping trips. And Dan was one of the producers of this show called Meat Eater, which that was the first show that I ever had a hunting experience on. And the hunting experience was in Montana in the Missouri Breaks, and it was 9 degrees outside, and we're camping, and we did it for I guess it was 6 or 7 days, and we were successful. We got fortunate and came back with deer, and then we went to this place. I believe it was Billings. We went to this just ratchet fucking motel that we stayed in and took a hot shower, and it was phenomenal. It was like one of the best experiences of my life. Like, so pleasurable to be in this ratchet ass fake wood paneling, you know what I mean, like the whole deal. Like there was nothing nice about this motel room,
except there was everything nice about it in that moment,
my god, the fucking shower was glorious, and I had brought my own soap, because I travel with
that's good planning. This is
soap that I use called Defense soap, and it's got it was developed for grapplers, but it's all to protect your skin from like skin issues like ringworm and stuff like that. But my friend Guy Sacco created it for wrestlers, and it's all like tea tree oil and eucalyptus oil, so it's really good for you. So I'm in this shower, I got this like legit soap, and I'm lathering up, and the water's so hot. I must have took a 40-minute shower, man. I never got out of there. I was in there forever.
I love that.
I was so happy.
That was me too, except I didn't have a custom-made awesome soap. I wish I would have. Damn, that was a
fucking any soap would have been fine at that time.
Yeah.
For just the smell too. God, you fucking stink so bad after a week of no shower, and you went 33 days.
Oh, I smelled like a salmon run mixed with a garbage dump.
Now, how long into your hunt did you get food? Did you catch?
We were a couple
did you
weeks
catch fish
in.
or?
No, but we got a caribou.
Fish? You did get a caribou.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
So you were Mountain House for 2 weeks.
Mountain House, bars, yeah. And then we had caribou, and when that caribou came in, it was just like, honestly, that caribou was the best meal I've ever had in my life in that teepee, because food is like, it's a culmination of how hungry are you, who are you with, what is the experience. It honestly was so unbelievably good in that moment.
Were you guys in a place that actually had dry wood?
We found a little bit. It was tough. It was tough.
So how did you cook?
We had a little
jet boils?
Yeah, jet boil thing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's the thing about Alaska, particularly that area. It's a lot of it is just tundra. It's like this open, I don't know if you'd call it tundra, but whatever it is, just long stretches of grass and totally.
And
not that many animals either. That's what's weird, right? You would imagine the real wild. You'd imagine, there's animals all over the place, just fucking jacking each other. No.
Yeah, except so we were there during the migration, and there were none until they were literally everywhere. I mean, it was like it was almost like a war film where like all the soldiers come over the hill all at once, and they're like ants on an anthill. It was just like, holy shit. It's unbelievable.
And they're eating that weird moss stuff too, right? What's that shit called?
Yeah, like lichen and moss.
Yeah.
There's just all kinds of little...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you can eat that too. Like humans can eat that lichen stuff.
Yeah,
it tastes tasteless.
No, it tastes a little bit like green beans.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys had it?
Yeah, it's not. It's not like we're making a salad with it, but you're just sitting there and like, I guess I'll eat this. It's not too bad.
Did you have a tag as well, or did only?
Yeah, I had a tag. So I had never hunted before. I mean, I'd been hunting, but I hadn't actually been the one who was the hunter. So that was new too. That's a form of discomfort that I talk about in the book that we are very removed from the life cycle now, right? So this goes from how we deal with funerals. Think of modern funeral. It's like we dress the dead person up to look as alive as possible. We look at them for an hour and then they go into the ground and we're told to, keep your mind off it. Don't think about it, stay busy. To our food system, it's like the meat we have in our grocery store is all perfectly manicured. It's cellophaned. It's like designed almost so it doesn't look like it came from a living animal, right? So I definitely had some reservations going into it. It's not that I was against hunting at all. It's just like, I don't know if I want to cross this barrier that I assume is going to be emotionally heavy.
Right.
And Donnie was basically like, look, man, if you don't want to hunt, you don't have to hunt. But I think you'll understand why we come out here more if you do hunt. So I was like, okay, I think I'll do it. I wasn't entirely sure, honestly, the whole time. So
you had a tag, but you weren't sure if you're going to use it.
Yeah. And we, at one point we are on this hill glassing, and we'd been watching this herd who was on this other hill far away. There's kind of a valley between us. And they start moving up this valley, and there's a saddle. And Donnie's like, okay, if they keep moving and go over that saddle and we can get to the other side of it before, we're going to be in a pretty good position. So it's like, soldiers at the sound of a mortar. We're like just cranking across this hill. We get over the saddle, and once we get to the other side, we're just cranking at, what we think is going to be about 300 yards. We like get into the dirt and we army crawl. And I've got meanwhile I have the rifle. And army crawl a couple hundred yards, pop up, can't see anything, another 100 yards. And I'm looking through the scope, and Donnie has binoculars, and all of a sudden at the apex of the saddle just like appear these antlers, right? And then more antlers. And there's about 30 of them in this herd. And we'd already identified at least 2 that we thought were older and bigger. And they come over this saddle and down like exactly as we'd hoped. And, they're 300 yards, 200 yards. And still at this point, I'm like, are you sure you're going to do this, man? It's heavy. And they get within about 150 yards, and there's this one that had come over that we could see as he was walking. He's limping on his back leg. So it's like, that's the one. He's old, really, really interesting, ornate antlers, just old dude who'd clearly been injured somehow. Who knows? They get within 150 yards, and it's like, this is the point where I want to shoot, but he kept going in and out of the herd. Like I couldn't get him in the scope. And Donnie sort of leans over to me and he's like, hey, man, if you don't want to shoot, you don't have to shoot. But if you're going to shoot, you need to do it soon. And so I looked down the scope, and they're 160, 170. They passed the point where they're kind of going away from us. And I'm like, shit, what do I do? And all of a sudden they part, and he's right there, and it was like, big deep breath, pull the trigger again, and it's like he's down. And in that moment I was like, holy shit, what have you done? Like, there is no coming back from this, right? Like, it hit me pretty heavy. And so we walk out, and it's down on the tundra, almost like it had been placed perfectly. There's the only sign that it is dead is there's like this tiniest trickle of blood coming down its mane. And I was like, dude, what have you done? Like, look at this majestic thing, and that's on you, And Donnie's a good person to go with, because him and William were like, hey, we're going to go get our stuff, because we'd left our packs back there. So he gave me a minute with it. And as I'm sitting there, it was super interesting. I'd like to hear what you think about what your experience has been, but hit me like it was the most depressed and alive I've ever felt at the same time. Like, unbelievable feeling. I don't know how to describe it. Just thankful. Yeah. A lot of gratuity. And, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if I'd ever do this again, those guys get back, and then we start to, field dress the animal. And, in that moment, my mind started to shift, because I went from, okay, you just killed this majestic creature, to now I'm seeing it as meat, and therefore a giver of life, more or less. And I think to myself, dude, you eat meat all the time at home, and never once do you feel an iota of emotion, but you do here. And so it made me a lot more appreciative of not only like that animal and the place where it came from, but also all meat that I eat now, right? It totally woke me up to like what goes into eating meat. And so now it's interesting. Paradoxically, you would think when someone starts hunting, they would eat a lot more meat. It's like, no, I actually eat less meat now because I kind of better understand where it comes from and what has to go into it. And sort of this idea of death and being more aware of it, after I got back from the Arctic, I traveled to Bhutan. I wanted to know more about this and like what can becoming more aware of our death do for us. So Bhutan is interesting because it's one of the least developed countries on Earth, but paradoxically, it's one of the happiest. And one thing that people are instructed to do in Bhutan is to think about their death at least once every day. And this is part of like, it's woven into the culture, that idea, and also the idea of death itself. So like a lot of their art and traditions center around death. They have, there's these little things called sasas, and they're basically these tiny clay pyramids. And it's clay mixed with ashes of the dead, and they are everywhere, all over the country. So it's you can kind of think about it as like a very death-aware country.
Why are they so death-aware?
It's part of the Buddhist tradition that they follow. They've just sort of leaned into that more than other countries. And so I wanted to know, like, how does this idea of death and their intimacy with it contribute to their happiness? Because, like, by all metrics, they should be miserable if we're looking at it from an economic perspective, right? But here they are. They're in the top 20 happiness rankings. And so I met with one of their economists who studies happiness in the country. But I also met with two Buddhist leaders. And one of these, it was pretty wild. So in Bhutan, the law states that you have to have a driver everywhere you go. The tourism is very heavily regulated. So I have this driver, and I'm going to meet this guy who's a Kempo, which is essentially really high up in Buddhism, and he lives right by this monastery called the Karpo. And it's on this cliff, right? And my driver has what is essentially a smart car with a back seat. And we have to go up this mountain road, cliffside mountain road that's totally rutted out. And I'm like, are you gonna be able to make this? And he's just like, I mean, we're like four-wheeling this smart car thing. And it was unbelievable. And after 45 minutes, he pulls over and I have to hike for maybe 10 minutes along this trail and get to this guy's shack, and he has someone there who's helps him with stuff, and she makes me do this like cleansing ritual with like smoke and some water, and I go into this guy's shack. It's like the first room, there's nothing in it. The second room, it's a kitchen, very basic, like a cooktop or whatever. And the third room has this silk sort of drape in it, and I pull that drape back, and I'm immediately hit with the smell of burning incense. And on the right, there's this, there's like a big statue of the Buddha and like photos and different little, trinkets, Buddhist trinkets. And then I look over, and the light is like catching this incense smoke, and behind it, there's this guy's face, and he just looks over at me, and he's in the lotus position on this platform. He's in his full like Buddhist robes and everything, and he just looks at me and goes, "Welcome." And it was like
some Doctor Strange shit.
Oh, dude. It was like, I mean, if you want to talk about like cliche in terms of, the gangly Western writer has come to see the guru. That was fucking it, dude.
Wow.
And so I talked to him for a few hours about, death and like, how do they view it there versus us? And he talks about it in terms of when you think about the fact that, I'm going to die, you're going to die, we're all going to die eventually. You take that into your life, it changes your behavior because you start to realize like there's going to be an end to all this, right? And things that maybe were, finicky in your life, or these like little minute things that really work you up, that all starts to fade, and you start to really center on that which is going to make you actually happy in the end. And it's interesting because Western research by scientists has actually backed this up. So they've done studies where they have people think about their own death, and those people end up report that they're happier, that they're like more on track in their life. They've done this in people who are dying as well, where they like think about the end and accept it, sort of take it into their life. They have better lives. It's really interesting. And I mean, it's something I do in my own life, and I can tell you that I think it actually works.
Yeah, being aware of where this ride ends.
Right.
It's probably very important in terms of what you need to enjoy the ride. Like if you just think it's going to go on forever. It's like you're saying about kind of being impatient about the wait staff at that restaurant and thinking what a inconvenience it is that they're so slow to get you water.
Yeah.
Versus what you feel after you've been hunting for 33 days and actually killed an animal. Yeah. And yeah, we're so spoiled in terms of our attachment to food. I decided about 9 years ago that I was either going to become a vegan or I was going to become a hunter. I was like, there's no middle ground. I was like, I'm going to have to figure out what it means to eat. Because I would probably gone vegetarian because I think I would always eat eggs because it's especially if you have your own chickens, it's a pretty karma-free exchange. You give them food and they give you eggs. Yeah. It's like, and the eggs are super healthy. But when I did go hunting, the moment I shot that animal, the moment it was down, like you could actually watch it. There's a video that's available online of I had to shoot it twice. I shot it and dropped it at 200 yards, and then as we were getting up to the animal, it was still alive, and then I had to put it out. Mm-hmm. And they like closed in on my face when I'm taking all this in, and I shot it, and then it expired instantly, and then I'm sitting there, just breathing in and just trying to take in, like, okay, I just killed an animal that I'm going to eat. And I've never done this before, and I'm 40. Yeah. So here we are.
What was going through your head?
It would be hard for me to explain with just words because it's a strange emotion. First of all, I didn't fully like you were saying, like once you start cutting it up and then it becomes meat, like when it was down, it was like, okay, I've done this thing. I've done a lot of things in my life that make me nervous, and I think I always gravitate towards things that I think are difficult, they're scary, whether it's martial arts competition or stand-up comedy or anything. I gravitate towards things that I think are difficult because I'm attracted to these challenges. So this was a challenge because it was a new thing, and it was like, you're doing this rugged thing. We went, we floated down the river like 40 miles, and
that's cool.
Carried all of our supplies and tents and set up on the banks of the Missouri, and it was heavy. It was heavy. And so dropping this animal, but then once we cooked, we were eating it over the fire. That night we ate the liver, and I think we ate the heart too, over the fire. And I remember thinking, this is what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. Yeah, this is how I'm gonna eat. Like this is so much better than any other. I've never felt meat that tasted this good before. I've never felt connected to my food before. I've caught fish before and eaten fish, and it's great. But there's something that was so much more intense about this. I guess because it's a mammal, there's some weird connection where your DNA is letting you know that like this is way closer to you than a fish. Like people, you could take a fish out of an ocean and take a photograph of it online. Nobody gives a shit. I had a thing I did on social media for a while, or I did a while back rather, a hierarchy of dead animals on social media, and I had number one was a fish. and it was like a dead fish. Nobody gives a shit. Like, you take a fish, look, I caught a bass. Everybody's like, hey, good job. Next was a turkey. I had a dead turkey that I shot. People were like, I don't know about this dead turkey. Then I had bear meat. It just said
How'd
bear
that go?
meat. Nobody said anything. They didn't know what to say because it was just meat. But there's photos of me with a dead bear, and it is the most hate I've ever gotten for any photograph online. Even though I ate that bear, and even though you have to shoot these bears because their population in Alberta, where my friends John and Jen run a hunting camp up there, they're out of control.
Yeah.
And they need to control the population because they decimate the moose population, they decimate the deer population, they cannibalize each other. It's very unhealthy for them to not have predators. The only predators they have is larger, bigger bears, grizzlies. So, but people, for whatever reason, have not connected bears with food for a long time.
Right.
In terms of the history of the United States, Daniel Boone was famous for being a bear hunter and commercially selling bear meat. And they would smoke bear hides, or smoke bear hams, rather. And bear meat was actually preferred over deer meat for whatever reason. And deer were hunted for their pelts, and bear were hunted for their meat. And we have decided that they're teddy bears, and that it's Yogi and Boo Boo, and those are our buddies. And it's a weird. We've just made this weird decision somewhere along the line to put, as my friend Steve Rennell calls them, charismatic megafauna. Put them in this category of animals that you should not eat or hunt.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the weird thing is they're the most dangerous. They're the ones that you really should hunt because they'll eat your kids.
Yeah.
Like, a deer is not going to eat your kids.
No.
But a fucking bear will for sure. You leave a baby in a backyard, a bear will 100% eat it.
Oh, yeah.
Not a question in the world.
Totally.
Where a deer will just look at your baby and not care at all. Like, we have a weird arrangement.
Yeah.
But eating that animal and hunting that animal, it completely changed my idea of what food is, completely. And from then on, I've had a completely different idea of what food is. And I've gone on to hunt. I've hunted every year since. It's something I would look forward to. I get a giant amount of my meat from it. I give it to a lot of friends. I keep 2 commercial freezers here at the studio. You know, that's what I do now. I hunt meat.
Yeah.
And I'm healthier because of it.
Yeah.
You know, I really do believe that elk meat in particular, that dark red wild animal that's running around the mountains, like, you're getting it's so nutrient dense.
Super.
It's so much more filled with protein than domestic beef, and it's just better for you.
Yeah, I agree. Now the question is, like, how do we put that at scale for everyone?
You can't.
Yeah. Well,
that's the thing, though. It's like you're not going to.
No. I do think there's almost an argument, though, that maybe in elementary school we need to take kids to a slaughterhouse, or junior high. Like, that needs to be a field trip to understand where things are. Yeah. We need to understand where things come from and, like, what goes into this, you know?
I think this is a selfish proclamation. I realize this going in. I think the idea of doing things at scale is lost. You got to let it go.
Let it go.
You're not going to save everybody. I feel like that with exercise. I feel like that with meditation. I feel like that with yoga. I feel like that with hunting. I feel like that with just trying to be the best person you can be. You're only going to reach the people that want to hear the message. And for the people that want to hear the message, those are the people that you're reaching to. But the idea of scale, the idea of, like, how do you feel? Like, I've heard that argument from vegetarians or vegans that you shouldn't hunt because when you say you should hunt for your food, you know, how are we going to do that with the entire population? We're not. You know what else we're not going to do with the entire population? Get them to read. You know, you're not going to get them to exercise. Yeah. You're not going to get them to do it. I'm not here for everybody. I'm here for anybody who wants to listen. I'll tell you what I've done and what's changed me and what I think could maybe change you if you're so inclined to pursue it. But this idea of reaching the masses, Jesus Christ, you got to go back to when they're a baby. You got to start from scratch. You got to put incentive in front of them. You got to give them motivation. You got to show them that there's a real reward in pursuing risk and then in doing difficult things and challenging themselves, even though it's hard. And there's moments, man, like to this day, even just doing stand-up comedy or doing anything that's hard. I mean, especially in the public eye, you face a lot of criticism. There's a lot of like days where it's like, God, is this really worth it?
Right.
But then you come out on the other end of it, and it is worth it.
Yeah.
But you have to recognize, you have to understand the process, and you have to recognize that through this struggle, eventually there'll be a resolution that'll be better. You'll learn, you'll get better at what you're doing. You'll be a better version of who you are because of this struggle.
Yeah.
But most people don't want to hear that shit. They just want comfort. They just want a softer seat to sit in, and they want a better sleeping pill
Yeah.
so they can, go to bed at night.
Yeah, well, it's, when you choose the opposite path, you're fighting against millions of years of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Because back in our past environments, everything took effort, everything was uncomfortable. To do the thing that made you most comfortable back then saved your life.
Yes.
Kept you out of crazy inclement weather, saved you from effort that just burned up calories that were hard to find. It helped you avoid risk. And so it was great.
Right.
Till nearly about 100 years ago, right after the Industrial Revolution.
You had to do a certain amount of difficult work
You
just
had
to
to.
survive.
It was part of life.
You had to.
Mm-hmm.
There was never a moment in history, unless you were like one of those really rich, overweight people that you see in those paintings.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it amazing that those
The
were the
lords.
attractive people?
Yeah, I love
Like,
that.
when you see a guy that was like super fat or a woman who was like way overweight, they were the attractive ones.
Oh, it's
It's
a
like,
flex.
look, they can eat so much.
Yeah.
They're just gorging themselves with food.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
What is that? There's weird things that people do with food when they get really, really wealthy and really, really opulent, and it's just where there's so much food, you could do whatever you want. But there's a bird. God damn it! There's this bird that they soak in brandy. It is like one of the craziest. It's a full whole bird that's soaked in brandy, and it's a small bird, and they eat this thing. They would eat it. Duncan Trussell's the one who told me about this. They would eat it underneath like a tablecloth, and the idea was that you would get the smells of this thing in because it was like literally drowned in brandy, but also because you were shielding yourself from God. Yeah. What is it called again?
It's depicted on the show Billions.
Oh, is it?
It's called Axe, I guess.
No, it's an
Delicacy Axe.
So you're like,
Yeah,
you're-
no.
Oh, that's the character's name. I'm sorry.
yeah. It's a real thing. No, what is it called? That's right. Ortolan. Yeah.
Okay.
So this ortolan, they would put this. It's illegal. Well, I think it's illegal now because they're very endangered. But it's a very small bird, and like see if you can find like the preparation, what it says there.
Look at that photo. Looks very, very appetizing. Let me.
Yeah, but that's from the movie. But you eat the whole thing. Like it's
Okay.
not gutted or anything. It's enveloped in fat that tastes subtly like hazelnut. French chef Michael Girard told the paper in 2014. And to eat the flesh and the fat and the little bones hot all together is like being taken to another dimension. The fragile songbird from France, which weighs less than 1 ounce and is about the size of your thumb, was served exclusively to royalty and rich, what is that word? Gourmands.
Gourmands.
Do you know that word? I guess
Gourmand.
that's like someone who eats gourmet food.
Yes.
Until it became
Foodie.
illegal in 1999. The procedure for preparing an ortolan has long been controversial. They are kept in darkness for weeks or are blinded, which causes the bird to gorge on grains and grapes and become fat, the key ingredient to its decadence when cooked. The birds are then thrown alive into a vat of, how's that word?
Use your best French.
Armagnac brandy, which both drowns and marinates them. Then roasted. Ortolans are meant to be eaten feet first and whole, except for the beak, according to the Times. So this was like
That's
the thing to eat if you were one of those fat fucks in a painting.
yeah.
But arguably, barbaric preparation isn't why eating the bird is illegal. They are endangered with a decreasing population. The European Union declared ortolan a protected species in 1979, though France took 20 years to act on this. In 2014, Michelin-starred French chefs like Gérard and Alain Ducasse were fighting to get the bird on their menus. Of course you were, you cunts. to revive a culinary tradition dating back to Roman times. They wanted to be able to hunt and serve the bird. Hunt? Say that loosely, please.
Yeah.
After you've gone caribou hunting, imagine this bird the size of your thumb. I will hunt it.
Yeah. It's like a capture, so
Yeah.
I can drown it in brandy in a week.
Hunt and serve the bird for 1 week a year. They have been unsuccessful. However, that doesn't stop some from eating the bird. According to the New York Times, about 30,000 ortolans are still being captured and sold illegally in the south of France, where a single bird is going for $180, or the price of an ounce of coveted white truffles. Wow. Secret gatherings featuring the elusive meal have been documented. In 2008, Esquire writer Michael Paternity attended one such French dinner that served ortolan. The chef, who was breaking the law, had to call 40 of his friends in search of the bird, for there were none to be found, and almost everyone feared getting caught, risking fines and possible imprisonment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is that what we're
Decadence.
Gonna go out and have for lunch after this?
I don't think you can get it here in Texas.
Yeah, no.
But you can get brisket, which is better than that
There you
stupid
go.
fucking bird anyway. It's a
What a strange world like food can be, right?
Yeah, it is.
Interesting, yeah.
But that is for sure not someone who's connected to the animal's life.
Exactly.
Right? And so this is like the best example of a complete, utter disconnect from nature.
Yeah.
First of all, and I am not into eating cute things, like a little tiny cute little bird. Like I would have to be hungry as fuck to eat a bird the size of my thumb.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's interesting, too, what you said about fish, that people didn't react to fish on your Instagram feed. You see that,
give a shit.
You see that mimicked in the grocery store, right?
Yep.
Like fish, they have the whole thing out there. No one cares.
With the head.
Can you imagine if you just put a full dead cow like in the meat section? People would lose their minds.
They would go crazy.
And it's like, well, why is that?
Well, they used to have lamb's head. You could get lamb's brains. My uncle used to cook lamb's brains. It was like, it's I guess a delicacy.
Okay. How was it?
They would grill it. I don't remember. I was really young at the time. I remember I had it. I was like probably 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
But they would grill lamb's brains, like the whole head of the lamb.
Yeah.
And it's just real rare that you could find something like that in an actual super. You'd have to go some weirdo supermarket.
Special butcher.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, that's interesting.
All you see is meat. You don't see any of the animal. You don't see a hoof.
No,
you know?
We have words to describe it that you know aren't that it's not from an animal.
Yeah, right. Like beef.
Like certain cuts, you know, the cuts names are. We don't say, oh yeah, this is his, back muscle, or this is his,
Well, I'll do you one better. We don't even have a name for moo cows. Like cows, cow is a female animal.
Yeah.
And a bull is a male animal. Like a bull moose is at least a moose. But a bull is what? What is it?
A bull?
Yeah, it's a what is it?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It's a male. It's
Right.
just we're just calling it a male.
Yeah.
Like a bull elk is a bull. Like there's a bull, but that's an elk.
Yeah.
If someone says, "What did you go hunting?" Yeah, we went elk hunting. Did you get one? Yeah, I got a bull.
Right.
Or I got a cow.
Yeah.
But a cow, like a moo cow, like what is that? We don't even have a name.
I don't know.
There's no name.
Right.
That's weird.
Yes, that is weird.
Because that's all we do with them. We just eat them.
Yeah.
So we've decided the best way is just not even have a fucking name for the animal.
Yeah.
Which is so strange, right? At least we have a name for chicken. But chicken we don't give a shit about. So when you eat chicken, it's just chicken. We don't have to come up with a name like it's venison.
Yeah. We don't need to use euphemisms or anything
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Buffalo, though, is buffalo. It's just buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is. Or bison.
I don't
We can
know.
call it bison, but a bison is a bison.
Right.
American buffalo is a bison.
Yeah. Could be a certain type of person buys that's more woke to the fact that they're, eating meat from an animal.
I hate
I
to
don't know.
use the word woke.
You want to punch me real quick?
No, I don't
Stick
hate
my
it that
jaw
way. I
here.
mean, it's just that it's a word. But it's like, but bison meat is just bison.
Yeah.
Which is it's interesting, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when they do polls about who is for and against meat eating, the people who are most against meat eating tend to live in cities and be most removed from the food system. Whereas when they poll people who live in, more rural areas, they're okay with it because they have the most interactions with the animals.
Yeah.
So it's like the loudest voices against it tend to be people who have no clue, no intimacy or connection with it.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a real issue with that in British Columbia because British Columbia has outlawed grizzly bear hunting.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's a real issue. So for people that live up there, now these animals are because it's been going on for a few years now. So now you'll have like 2-3-year-old mature bears who've never lived during a time where bear hunting was legal. And so these motherfuckers have no fear of people.
Yeah, they're just doing whatever.
They're doing whatever. My friend had to shoot one entering his cabin. It was 6 feet from him when he shot it.
No shit. What did he have to do after? Did he have to call it in and like go through a big process? Or?
This was actually before it was illegal.
Okay.
But this is how brazen these enormous animals are. I mean, we're talking about like 600-pound predatory giant beast.
Yeah.
And it was coming into his cabin. It was like literally like 6 feet from his cabin when he shot it.
Wow. That's
He
crazy.
opens the door. It's right there. And just boom.
Yeah, because it's
One
like
to the dome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No fear. I can get food in
But
here.
they
What do I care?
had issues with it before. It was like it had broken in and it had broken into their food supply. There was a couple different issues with this particular bear. And once they just decide, like, it would be literally like if you were really hungry and like a puppy was trying to keep you from getting to some food. You'd be like, what? No, I'm going to get to that fucking food. That puppy's not going to stop me.
Yeah.
But luckily for the puppy, it has a rifle.
Yeah. It was a 30-06.
That's really
Dangerous
the
puppy.
relationship between a human and a grizzly bear. They're so big.
Oh, dude, they're huge. They're like, what do they get up to? 1,500 pounds probably when they're by the coast and just really filled up with salmon.
Yeah, I think
all
they
that fat.
can definitely get up that
Big,
big.
big boys.
When you were up there, what was your encounters? You'd seen some?
Yeah, we saw some from a distance. We saw we had one that was going through areas that we had been hiking through, and then at one point we're on this like island in this river, the Anasac River, and we show up on this bank, and it's like there's just these massive paws, right, and grizzly shit everywhere, and there's all these salmon that they'd been eating because the salmon run had happened, and Donnie's like, well, we're definitely getting bears tonight, boys. He's just like whatever about it. I think he's got some gene that just takes away his fear or something like that. I'm like, why are we camping here?
Well, he's been around it for so long.
Yeah, that's it.
They
And
all develop this weird sort of like comfort level.
Yeah.
Being around these super predators.
Yeah, and we didn't see any there. Luckily, we saw the bears that we think were there from a spotting scope moving out of the area like a day later. But we didn't have any encounters.
Oh, that's good.
And it was hilarious because we had gotten the caribou at that point, and so Donnie at one point is like trimming the caribou in camp to because we're gonna have dinner, and he's just chucking the trimmings in the bushes, going, "Yep, definitely fucking getting bears tonight, boys. Like just whatever." I'm going, good hell.
Maybe he's fucking with you a little bit. Did you think that? Like he was playing off the fact that you were a little bit nervous about the experience?
He might have been. I don't know. If he was, Donnie, if you're listening to this,
Fuck you, Donnie.
fuck you.
My friend John saw a bear kill a moose through
No
a spotting
shit.
scope. Yeah, he said he saw the bear. He was chasing the moose and swatted the moose in the back and broke its back.
Just one swat.
Just one swat. That's how big and strong a mature male grizzly bear is.
So I had when I was in high school, I had a math teacher who would go up summers in Alaska. And if we all turned our homework in on time, he'd tell us bear stories, right? And he had this one story. I don't know if it's true or not, but basically it goes like this. There's a tourist like fishing boat or whatever, and they sent one of the deckhands out to pick berries off of this bush, right? And so this kid is picking these fresh berries for this tourist. Well, come to find out there's a grizzly on the other side of this big bush also picking berries, and they slowly converge. They're trying to yell at him like, hey, there's a grizzly there. They converge and see each other. The bear gets up on 2 feet, pulls back his paw, and freaking slaps the kid's head off. I mean, that's the story.
Slapped his head off.
Like a little leaguer hitting a baseball off a tee. Just like, holy shit.
It sounds ridiculous, but I bet it's possible.
But they're strong enough. I know. I told Donnie, he goes, it sounds kind of bullshit to me. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not going to find out on that one. I'm not
They're
gonna get
so
too close.
big.
They're so strong too.
Cameron Haynes has a photo on his Instagram from a couple of days ago of a grizzly that he shot and then also ate. Like he's got like the packages of bear meat wrapped up in his freezer.
Yeah.
Because people always ask, "What do you even eat that?" Yes.
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 It's
Eats it.
interesting that people get so
Like,
turned
look at the
off
size
by
of that thing. Now imagine that thing hitting some guy in its head.
Oh yeah. And
It
just
is
so-
interesting that they get turned off by the fact that someone would eat a predator,
Yeah.
but they don't get turned off by someone eating like a duck.
Yeah, or the chicken. They say that while eating beef or chicken. It's like it's all meat
Weird.
at the end of the day. It's like we put different
Yeah.
value on different things, and I don't think we necessarily stop and think why.
Yeah, and Donnie loves bear. Like you talk to Donnie Vincent about it, he's like, he
Yeah.
goes, anybody who thinks bear doesn't taste good, let me cook it for you. Let me cook it for you.
Yeah.
He goes like even like a big, nasty grizzly bear. He goes, if you prepare it right and cook it right, it is delicious. He's like, it's some of the best meat.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to one of the guides when we were up there in Alaska, and this guy's like, I would never eat bear meat. Just smells bad. But I don't want to be around it. You know, the bears are filthy. They smell bad. I'm like, well, do you eat cow? Why don't you go take a walk through a slaughterhouse? Tell me if you still want to eat beef by
I've
that
talked
measure.
to a couple guides that are like that don't like bear.
It's weird.
They get into this weird, and hunters, I've talked to hunters that don't like bear.
Yeah.
But my friends John and Jen that I was telling you about up in Alberta, they've been running bear hunting camps up there for years, and they've got amazing recipes. Like they'll slow smoke a bear ham on a Traeger, and if you have it, it's like the best roast beef you've ever had in your life.
That sounds awesome.
Like they brine it, and then they'll like have the certain preparation. They'll put like a Traeger rub on the outside of it,
Mm-hmm.
slow cook it for hours and hours, and it's just falling off the bone
Yeah.
tender. There's a lot of ways to cook bear but it's in our heads. It's you fucking piece of shit. You just want to kill it because you're a monster. But it's one of the smartest things to kill.
Yeah.
Like if you love deer and elk and caribou and all these animals, you really do have to control the population of these super predators, and there's only one way to do it. You have to hunt them.
Yeah.
They're not going to control themselves. You can't give them birth control.
Things will get totally out of whack.
Yeah.
I mean, because you could argue it's like, well, you guys are trying to play God, but at the same time, it's like we've had such an impact on the wild that if we don't do anything, I mean, things are going to get a little weird. I mean, we could let it go.
Yeah.
But like, okay, see what happens, and I don't know.
That you guys are going to you guys are playing God argument is actually valid.
Yeah, I
really
think it is too.
I mean, if you want to be honest about the whole thing, like when someone says, "Oh, managing wildlife, you're playing God," like, yep, I think you're right. I think they are. But I think sound wildlife practices based on real sound research by wildlife biologists is valid too. Like they know what they're doing, and they know that certain populations of animals get out of hand. It could be a real issue.
Yeah.
Both for prey animals and for predators, for all of them.
Yeah.
There's a balance that can be achieved. Like, I mean, it's controversial, but there's a documentary. The reason why it's controversial is because the guy who made the documentary is he's a bit nutty. But it's about how wolves. It's called How Wolves Changed Rivers, and it's about Yellowstone, and it's about the reintroduction of wolves. And now the reintroduction of wolves, although it lowered the amount of elk that were in the area, it was essentially an unnaturally large population because there was no predators.
Yeah.
So the hunters loved it because it was easier to go find and kill an elk.
Mm-hmm.
So they were upset that these
Right.
wolves came in. But then in this documentary, he's explaining how the wolves killing the elk actually made more vegetation because the elk weren't grazing on the vegetation. It opened up these pathways for all these animals to grow and plants to grow, and all these other things survive because there's more vegetation now, because the populations of these deer and these cervids are down.
Yeah.
And that there's a real balance that needs to be achieved.
Yeah. And part of it is how we've structured the lower 48, right? Like there's roads everywhere, so these animals can get sort of caged in, and wolves are a lot more successful, whereas like in the Arctic, it's all open space.
Yeah.
And the caribou can see a wolf coming that way more often than not, like wolves don't have a chance. They have to really work together as a team to converge and find a caribou that's injured or, younger or whatever. But most of the time caribou are getting away, so they're not as successful.
Right. They see them coming a long ways
Yeah,
away.
exactly. And caribou are fascinating because they're fast as shit. I mean, they top out at like 50, I think.
Really?
And when they're just moving in their normal trot, they're going like 12 miles an hour. So when we would see a herd and we'd think, okay, I hope it, slows down and starts to eat its way up this hill. We're going to try and swing around. If it caught our scent, it was just like, see you later, dude. Good luck, you know. We had one time, this was super fascinating. We gotten skunked. Had this, old bull that was like the size of a Buick that just got away. So we're coming back to camp and, we'd gotten our asses kicked, and we get inside of the teepee that night and there's a herd like literally in our camp, and so we're like, oh God, of course it works out that way. So William kind of sneaks in to get a view of these guys, get some footage, and he ends up spooking them. And Donnie and I are lying on the tundra, and this herd sprints, but they're sprinting like right at us. I mean, they don't see us. So they get within, 300 yards, 200 yards, 100 yards. At 100 yards, you start to really hear their hooves just smashing the tundra. At 70 yards, it's like you can start to smell them.
Wow.
50, it's like the ground is vibrating. It was like one of those moments where I'm just like a Zen monk, just totally looking at this herd and just like totally in the moment. And maybe like 30 yards out, one of them sees us, peels up, and they all follow. They all react as a group in sync, So they go up the top of this hill, and Donnie and I just look at each other like, holy shit, man. Unbelievable. And it's, it's like, it's kind of like wild as religious experience, to be honest. Like you get in those positions like that where you're out there and you have things like that happen to you. I mean, that shit changes you.
It's purity, right? The purity of the nature.
Yeah.
It's not like a zoo.
Exactly. And we're out there for, we're out there encountering all these risky, sketchy things, So you would think that I would be on edge the entire time. It's so damn cold. We've got this weather. There's grizzlies. You'd think that I'm like just a nerve-shaken, anxiety-ridden fool. It was the complete opposite. Of course, we had moments where there'd be spikes and nervousness, but like overall, I was way calmer than I'd ever been in my life, and like
really
just super chill.
Do you think that's also because of the physical exertion you're doing all day, because you're walking multiple miles and you're really burning off any excess energy that you have?
I think that has something to do with it, but not everything. Because so I get back and I follow up on this idea, like what the hell's going on out there, And I meet this woman whose name's Rachel Hopman. She's a neuroscientist, and she's basically studying what happens to the human brain after different doses and time in nature. So she's got this thing, there's this idea called the nature pyramid, and you can think about it a lot like the food pyramid, except saying like eat this many servings of grain and this many of meat. It basically tells us how long we should spend in what type of nature. So at the base of this pyramid, the research says that if you spend at least 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week, that's associated with less burnout and less stress and just kind of overall more well-being. And that's the type of nature that you could find like in a city park. Nothing too crazy. At the next step of this pyramid is 5 hours a month in a little bit more out there nature. So this is the type of stuff that you might find like in a state park. You have to go a little bit more out there to get it. And this is associated with a lot less depression, better well-being. And then at the very top, there's this thing called the 3-day effect. And it basically says that after 3 days in nature, it leads to these brain changes in the waves that your brain rides. So generally in this sort of modern frantic world we live in, people ride these waves that are called beta waves, and they're associated with like stress, just kind of go, 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 On the 3rd day in nature, people's brains, when they do scans out there, they have like this shit they have to take out in the wild and like put these caps on people's heads. People are riding what are called alpha waves. And those are waves that are found in experienced meditators. And people start to report like, man, I just feel so much calmer and more collected and more like at peace and in tune with my surroundings. It's almost like kind of going on a meditation retreat, except there's no gurus and they're not charging you and you can eat whatever the hell you want, you know?
Well, that's how human beings are designed, right? Or how we evolved. We evolved in those kind of environments.
Yeah.
And so it really comes to highlight what we're doing by living in these urban environments. Like my friend Jeff lives in New York. He loves it. And one of the things he talks about, I love the energy of the city. Like, but that's fucking madness, man. Like the energy of that city is madness.
Yeah.
Like what you're doing is something that's completely contrary to the way human beings evolved in nature for hundreds of thousands of years. You're stacking people on top of each other. You're constantly surrounded by people that you don't know at all, which puts you in this heightened state of anxiety, which is so bizarre because as tribal creatures, our whole inclination is to be surrounded with people that we can trust and be distrustful of people that we don't know.
Yep.
And then when we see others coming, we look at them and we get nervous. I mean, that's the whole reason why we have Dunbar's number, right?
Exactly.
Right. Dunbar's number, which is what, 150 people that you can keep, a tribal number that you keep in your head.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the so there's a lot of reasons why researchers think that this time in nature is good for us. That's one of them, that 150 number. It more closely mimics when we're outside, especially after 3 days, we're usually not with as many people. So we're out of these people-packed cities that just seem to like stress us out. There's also the physical thing that you talked about. Usually when people are out in nature, they're moving, doing stuff. But also the sights in nature seem to be calming for us. So nature, it tends to be made up of what are called fractals. So these are these repeating patterns that sort of make up the universe. So if you think about a tree, it's like tree goes into a branch, goes into a leaf. It's these repeating patterns, or like a river system, right? It's like small river to medium river to big river. And those seem to be calming for people. This is pretty interesting. One of the reasons that Jackson Pollock's paintings, I think, are so popular and really speak to us is that they're made up of fractals. So if you think about it, how he does his paintings.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Are they? I thought it was just splatters.
Well, they're designed much like fractals, where it's like these, you kind of have these big splatters that go into these smaller ones and they all kind of fade in and out, you know? So we see those patterns in nature and in the wild, but you don't get them in cities because cities are just a bunch of right angles and concrete, right? So when we get out in nature, we are embedded in those
flowers. And
yeah, exactly.
Pine cones and all the different things that fit into the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And even the smells of nature are associated with, you know, better well-being and calmness. So it's like this cascade of things that happen when we go out and spend time outdoors.
It only makes sense.
Totally.
We are from that.
Exactly.
That is how we evolved, and there's all these reward systems that are built into being a human being, and some of them come from being outside. Like you're rewarded with sunshine, which creates vitamin D. You get that feeling. That feeling when you go outside, you're like, that's your body saying, yeah, stay out here.
Yeah.
We need to refuel.
Totally.
Yeah, come get some of this.
And we lost a lot of that with being locked indoors and COVID. I mean, that was
unfortunately,
no fun.
Not good. This has been a fucking really strange year for mental health and physical health.
Yeah.
And a really strange year for counting on our so-called leaders to guide us in terms of what's the best course of action for being healthy.
Yeah.
The best course is not wear a face diaper and wait to get jabbed. Like the best course is take care of your physical health first. That's number one. And there was no discussion about that. There's no discussion about vitamins and exercise and healthy behaviors versus unhealthy behaviors. And maybe this is a good time to lose weight. More than 78% of people in the ICU for COVID were obese. That information was not distributed widely because they're worried about fat shaming people.
Yeah.
Instead of worried about giving people the information that they could use to boost their natural immune system and to bring their physical body into a healthier state. No, we have to protect people. We have to protect people from their feelings. Like, get the fuck out of here, man. You're supposed to tell people to lose weight. Yeah. You're supposed to. Go out there and move around. Be healthy.
Yeah, and if you look at the numbers, I mean, that was one of the biggest risk
comorbidity factor.
Yeah. That, and I don't know, and it's projected to get even worse. Like the overweight
Sedentary
obesity
lifestyles, yeah.
rate is supposed to go up into the 80s by 2030. The CDC projects. So
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
it's I mean, there's a lot of reasons for this, right? It's that our environments, we don't have to move as much. Like you could literally today take like 1,000 steps every day and be totally fine. You could
Yep.
live on, right? Whereas in
Forever.
the past, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, good luck. Our food system, it's like we have so many foods that are designed to tap into this evolutionary reward system that we have, with like dopamine spikes,
Sugars and
sugar,
fats.
salt, fat
Did
spike.
you wear a Fitbit when you're out there in the Arctic?
God. Well, I don't know where I would have charged it, but
How
I would
many
have
steps
loved
do you
that.
think you would have gotten in a day if you had an Apple Watch or a Whoop strap?
God, I don't know. Well, I think that I would have had to tweak the algorithm because were they normal steps or were they fucking Arctic steps
Right,
on these
right,
tundra
right.
tussocks where you're just like, someone kill me out here, please.
Well, that's where like something like a Whoop strap would come in handy
Yes.
because it would give you an indication of like where your heart rate was and heart rate variability. So it would show you how much stress you've
day strain.
yeah
Yeah.
how much strain you've blown out during the day.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can tell you the hardest thing after I killed the caribou was packing it out.
Oh my
yeah,
god!
'cause
On the tussocks.
on the tussocks in the
Oh,
tundra.
yeah.
We were about 5 miles from camp, and it was just because karma's a bitch. It was all uphill on the way back. So I've got 100 pounds or whatever, and my background is I worked at Men's Health for a lot of years, and I'm kind of into the outdoors. I've done some fitness stuff. It's like, look, at the end of the day, I'm a gangly ass writer, but like my work has forced me to go into some interesting physical situations. So it's
Right.
like, whatever, done some stuff. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. My life, by far.
I would imagine it would take a long ass time too. How long did it take you to hike out 5 miles with 100 pounds on your back?
5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're going about a mile an hour, 1 foot in front of the next. It was messed up, dude.
And you must have been so tired when you got done.
Oh yeah. Oh, unbelievable. Like at one point we we run into these 2 doll sheep, just amazing animals, and I just kind of looked at them like, okay, good to see you. I just need to keep moving. Like I'm just going, I don't
Right.
give a shit. I just want this to
How
be
far
over.
away were they?
Pretty close. I would say maybe 50 yards.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you had
they
a
were young.
tag,
They
there was
were young.
not a chance in hell they would be that close.
No.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because then, I get back and it kind of made me think about how we approach exercise, even in the modern world. Like you could argue we even try to make that comfortable too, right?
Right.
Because we do it in this air-conditioned gym and we get on a treadmill and we zone out to, Dog the Bounty Hunter or whatever the hell we want to watch.
Or
and
you're
then,
taking a spin class and someone's like motivating you. They're
Yeah.
like, come on, keep
Exactly.
pushing. Let's
Screaming.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
totally.
And,
And-
the beat comes on. You're in
Yes.
there. Fucking.
Yeah.
I've never done a
Exactly.
spin class, but I've seen them on TV.
I don't know, man. It sounds like you have. Those were pretty good descriptors.
I did. I'd tell you the truth. I love yoga. I'm not opposed to doing a spin class.
No.
I took a cardio kickboxing class recently.
How's that?
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Um,
Yeah. They like play music, and everybody has a bag, and then they call out combinations, and you go off on the bag. It was pretty
oh,
fun.
That's cool.
Yeah,
All right. I might dabble.
it was good.
All right.
It was like me and my wife and my daughter, and like mostly ladies. I think I was the only. Maybe there was one other guy in the room.
It's okay.
Mostly ladies.
Get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Um,
But the guy doing it was like, it was more of like a what's the best way to describe it? It's exercise, but it's fun. It's like
Yes.
a fun thing. Like it's not like, like you go to a regular kickboxing class. They're hard people. Like real kickboxers, they're scary people.
yeah, they're trying to kick something in
Yeah.
real life.
Yeah, they're trying to fight internal demons externally through this martial art.
Yeah.
There was no demons in that room. It was all yoga pants.
Yeah. So I've been to one spin class, and it was for a story when I was on staff at Men's Health. They thought it'd be really funny if they had me exercise with a bunch of old guys for like a week, because I was like kind of hard charging, They're like, you're gonna have to exercise with this group of old guys for a week.
How
and see
old were
what
these
you-
guys?
70s. Old.
Were they fit or
No.
were they no?
No, no, dude. So like one of the things that these old guys like to do is go into spin class, and I'm in there, and there's this one in front of me that like was in this group, and he had, before we got there, he'd been like telling me, he's like, yeah, I'm really into rare Jefferson Airplane recordings or whatever. The spin class starts, and I like realize, and I'm just looking at this old dude's butt the entire hour spinning.
Don't you want somebody to
Well,
love?
I'll tell you what I thought about. All the joy within you dies, man. I'm just like, holy hell. Yeah, it was an interesting story.
He's really into Jefferson Airplane. That's dating yourself.
Yeah.
Before Jefferson Starship.
Yeah.
Because Jefferson Airplane was first.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. They have great fucking music though.
Oh yeah, they're interesting.
Listen to some of their old shit. I was watching this Hunter S. Thompson documentary. And in it talked about, how he was like really into Grace Slick when she was performing in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And, it showed them like performing, and it showed, like you listen to some of the music and you realize like, wow, I forgot how fucking good they were.
Yeah. So are you a Thompson junkie?
Yeah, I'm a giant fan. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Me as well.
Yeah.
I think that's why I think two things got me into writing. One of them was Thompson. The kid, I grew up in Utah, so you can imagine this kid who grew up in Mormon country. I wasn't raised Mormon, but.
Oh, really?
And then I read, The Great Shark Hunt, and it was like,
Mhm.
holy shit, what
Yeah.
is this? And it was just like, it was on,
Yeah. He was a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
But there's a cautionary tale in there as well, too, right?
Oh,
For
totally.
excess substance abuse.
Well, that, and even as I think of him as one of the best things that ever happened to writing, and one of the worst things that ever happened to writers, because there's a lot of people who try and mimic that, and they just can't. Like,
Right.
I have students who that's what they want to do, and they'll like get messed up before they go out and report a story, and I'm just like, pump the brakes, bud.
Well, you know what, man? It's like that's who he was. The problem is that's who Hunter was. Like I know you want to be like Hunter, but you very rarely get to be yourself by trying to be like someone else.
Yeah.
You just gotta find,
You gotta find
figure out who you are. And maybe one of the ways is to try to be like that guy, and then along the way you realize like, hey, this is not for me, and then you find yourself.
Yeah.
One thing that does happen with stand-up comedians is, especially in the open mic days, you find yourself mimicking the comedians that you admired.
Yeah.
The ones that inspired you to get into comedy. You sound just like them. There's like Patrice O'Neill used to call them babies. He'd be like, I got a lot of babies out there. Like, because like people that like wanted to talk like Patrice. And Dave Attell had probably the most babies of anybody. Because there's all these comedians that wanted to talk like Dave Attell.
Okay.
So they would have their punchline sound like his. Because
Yeah.
he's got this very hilarious and very specific way of delivering material.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, but most of them, and I've known some guys that started out like that did sound like Attell or whoever, and they mostly, if they stay in a long time, if they're legit, they come around and then they become themselves. You got to just give them time.
Yeah. It's like you take a little bit from everyone, and that's how you become you.
Yeah, but doing acid and going to the Kentucky Derby, it's been done, bro.
Yeah. You might not want to do that.
The Kentucky Derby is decadent and depraved. It's a
depraved.
fantastic piece, though.
Oh yeah, it talks about getting off the plane and going meeting that dude at the bar. Just the way, just the dialogue is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, there's so much energy to his writing, you know.
Yeah. It's like, what does he say? He's like, I'll have a margarita, and he's like, oh hell no, you won't. Have a bourbon on ice, and he's like, okay, whatever. You know, just like I love that.
He had this insane routine that it was documented in, I forget what book it was, or article some woman wrote about him. I'm pretty sure it was a woman, but Greg Fitzsimmons and I read it on the air, like read the just what he did, like 6 o'clock in the morning,
his
cocaine, like
routine.
all these different things that he did, and then who's the fucking guy that turned it into a song? Something Man. What is his name? But it's 6 a.m. in the hot tub with champagne was the end of the day for Hunter.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the song's called 6 a.m. in the hot tub with champagne.
Nice.
But it just me and Fitzsimmons going over the entire day of his drug use,
That's great.
cigarettes, Dunhills,
Yeah.
cocaine,
Lots of grapefruits.
Chivas. Yeah, Beardy Man. That's right.
There you go.
It's pretty funny.
Nice.
But it's 6 a.m. and he'd become ready to write at like
With morning
midnight.
papers. 3:45, cocaine. Another glass of Chivas.
He woke up
Another
at 3
Dunhill.
p.m.
4:05 p.m. By the way, first cup of coffee and a Dunhill. 4:15, cocaine. Another Dunhill. 4:30, cocaine. Cocaine.
Yeah, I mean,
do.
you want to be the guy that they write, a story and someone makes a song about your routine. You want to
Yeah.
be this legendary guy where you show up with a fucking Vegas visor on and, when
That weird walk.
yeah.
It's like,
Well, he had a bad hip.
yeah.
That's what's fucked. Like, it's one of the reasons why he killed himself at the end of his life. He was in agonizing pain. He had hip replacement surgery
Yeah.
and all this. I don't even know how he blew his hips out, but he was, by the end of his life, he was fucked.
Yeah.
Couldn't talk.
Yeah.
He would go on these talk shows. Like, he would go on Conan in particular, and you could not decipher
Right.
what he was saying because he had literally destroyed his ability to communicate through cocaine and drugs and alcohol, and he was always drunk, and it was just like,
Yeah.
And you go back and see him in the 60s, like when he would talk, and even though he was odd and he was clearly like a very unusual dude who liked to party, you can understand him.
Yeah.
He had deteriorated in a way that I don't think he was aware.
No.
I don't think he was very self-aware. I think he was always medicated. I think he was always under the influence of something, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. It's,
Yeah.
I don't know. People lose sight of it.
There's also a great documentary where he talks about how he's become gonzo. Like, he's become this guy. He's where he doesn't know what they want when he shows up. Do they want Hunter S. Thompson or do they want Gonzo?
Right. He becomes a character, so
Yeah.
he has to, like, every single day. It's like, well, I can't not do this crazy routine because this is this character, and I have to put on this show for everyone.
That happens with people, right? You become a prisoner of your image. Like,
Yeah.
Kinison said that. Sam Kinison said he would show up at parties and they would just be like, oh, like he wrote about it, like, oh, it's him. And they would just make this giant line, like a fucking yard long of coke, and he would do it, and his heart would be ready to leap out of his chest because
Yeah.
they just assumed that that's what he did.
That's what. Yeah.
That's what they wanted to see. They wanted to see him chug booze and do lines and just be this party animal.
Yeah. It's too bad. I don't know.
You just got to get that across to your students that want to be Hunter.
Yeah.
Like, there's a fucking dark ending to this story.
Yeah.
Because when he died, I want to say he was 70. How old was Hunter when he died? He was not old.
No, he wasn't that old.
In terms of, like, there's people that are 70 right now that are very lucid. You can talk to them. They're very interesting. 68.
68.
Okay, so listen to this, man. I'm 53. Just stop and think of that.
Well,
so
that's
he's 15 years older than me?
Yeah, that's crazy.
What in the fuck?
Couldn't walk, couldn't talk. Yeah.
He was gone. Like,
Well, that shows you what
yeah.
basic maintenance will do for you.
Yeah, I mean,
working out, eating well,
Yeah.
being aware of all this stuff. It's like,
That's so crazy. I can't believe, I thought he was older than that.
yeah, that's crazy.
Fuck.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
very.
Tell your students. Maybe you want to be Matt Taibbi. Maybe he's a better example. He's
He's got that tone
Yeah.
and that rhythm and pacing and style, but I don't think he's.
but he's
gonna,
100% there.
Yeah,
and
totally.
he's doing like some of the best journalism in America right now.
I agree. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's being a writer has always been, I mean, way back to the Hemingway days, right? It's always been conflated, or it's always been connected rather to being kind of a drunk and a crazy person.
Yeah, totally. It has been. And look, I don't drink anymore, and there's a good reason for that. And at one point, I had to be like, I used to idolize like Thompson and Hemingway and all these people. And it's like, oh, if you want to be good at writing, I guess you got to drink.
Mm.
And then it occurred to me, wait a minute, those guys put a gun in their mouth and they're like 60s. Like maybe that's not a good path to go down.
But
Maybe
listen,
there's something else going on
they
here.
did some great fucking work before they pulled that trigger.
Yeah, they did.
That's the problem.
Exactly.
The problem is like that's what Christopher Hitchens said as well. Like at the end of his life when he was dying of cancer, you know, they said you burn the candle at both ends, and he was like, yes, but what a glorious flame it created.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's 100% necessary. That's the problem. I'm not sure though. I mean, maybe it is for them.
It's one of those questions where you go, did the people just have this gear, and that gear also happens to come with substance abuse problems? Whereas, like, had they never picked up a drink or drugs, like, they would have been that damn good regardless. And like,
Maybe.
it's just there's like a gene that like these two go step together. I don't know.
Maybe. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, look, one perspective is no one lives forever. And, you know, there's areas that these guys hit, these places these guys hit. Would they have hit those areas without substance abuse? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because there's a reckless aggression to like some of Hunter's writing.
Yeah.
That, like maybe you do when you're on coke and Chivas and you're just fucking blasted out of your mind.
Yeah.
And you're talking about, you know, the wave of civilization washing back.
Yeah.
You know?
That's an amazing line. But, you know, at the end of his life, it's like his writing really fell off, you know?
It did bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did.
It did bad.
So I don't know. There's like I think there's probably this sweet spot, right? But if you keep going after it, you're never going to hold that and just keep chasing, and it's just never going to come to that. It's always going to be rolling back. The wave doesn't, you know, say it like him. It's like the wave doesn't roll back and then spontaneously go back up.
Did you learn anything in writing this book? Did you learn anything about yourself, about your own relationship with comfort? Like, did it change your perspective in approaching it, and like in this deep study of creating this book, The Comfort Crisis?
I think so. I think the biggest thing for me, and this kind of goes back to that story I told you about the restaurant, is like we don't realize just how different our lifestyles are now than they were in our recent past, even 100 years ago. But like we evolved in these uncomfortable environments, and we have tipped the balance so far into everything being easy and effortless and challenge-free that we take so much for granted. You know, and so for me, it was like I had to go through that in order to see that. And from that, I found a lot more gratitude. Like when I was out there and things really sucked, like I just thought to myself, like I just was filled oddly with gratitude. It's like I appreciated I appreciated my wife, you know, my mom. I appreciated everything that I had at home. And it's like that. It was a deep, deep sense that I haven't ever felt in my life. But also I think that the other thing is, I think that people are capable of way more than we think, you know? So going into the Arctic, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this and sort of hang on. I mean, I was sketched out about it. It's like when I got in that plane for the first time, like shitting my pants on the runway. I'm like, you want me to get in that little thing? You know, like I don't like flying on a 737, much less this plane that's the size of a Snickers bar, you know? Yeah. But then we go out and it's like we face all these different things, and like you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Each situation is hard, but it's like you get through it. When that plane comes and picks me up a month later, fuck it, I'll get in it.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of fears fade when we reintroduce challenges into our life. So this is a concept I talk about in the book. You know, it's like as we evolved, we did hard shit all the time. This could be from a hunt. This could be from trying to migrate across the pass, you know, and a storm hits. This could be from tigers lurking in the bushes. And this was often without safety nets, right? But in modern life, we don't face any of these challenges anymore. So we have an outsized fear of failing. And we have nowadays it's like you slip up giving a presentation at work, you say the wrong word.
You want to kill yourself.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God. Or you didn't get enough likes. It's like, that is
Right.
failure.
Yeah.
And these failures are often in our head, whereas in the past, it was like there was real consequences to failure. So I think trying to figure out ways where how can I insert these moments where I'm facing these, sort of evolutionary challenges can show us that we have way more potential than we thought. It's like we get out to that edge of our comfort zone, and all of a sudden it expands and it expands, and we learn something about ourselves. We learn that we're capable of more, and then we come back into our modern life. It's like, bitch, I got this.
Yeah, I think I've definitely found that personally, that in doing challenging things, it makes the challenges of regular life less nerve-wracking.
Mm-hmm.
And also the opposite. When I'm not doing challenging things, it makes the challenges of regular life more daunting.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, it stacks up on you.
Yeah.
And you could feel it. It's not
Totally.
like it's not like I've done a lot of dangerous shit and a lot of crazy stuff, so I'm immune forever.
Yeah.
Like, no, it seems like it's like sweeping the floor.
It has to be constant.
Yeah, you have to sweep it every day, or the dust comes back.
Yeah.
You have to experience difficult shit.
Yeah.
I think we're designed that way.
I do
At least
too.
some of us are. Some people there's some people that just, for whatever reason, they're okay.
Yeah.
They're calm.
I think people are different, but I think most of us benefit from that. It's like,
Yeah.
we need to reintroduce these metaphorical tigers back into our life in a variety of ways. And so
That's
I
a good
met
way
up
of
with
putting it. I like that term. Reintroduce the metaphorical tigers.
Yeah, it's like I met this guy afterwards. His name's Marcus Elliott, and he's a Harvard MD, and he didn't want to be a doctor. He wanted to get into sports science because he thought he could really move the dial on it. This was like the early 2000s. And he's also kind of a far-out character. Like he would always go to Burning Man back in the day, and he got himself through college by counting cards. And so I'm telling you this to let you know he's kind of a seeker a little bit, So he decides, I don't want to be an actual doctor. I want to get into sports medicine because I think I can revolutionize the field by bringing more data and science into it. So the first job he gets is with the New England Patriots. And when he took the job, they at the time had about 26 hamstring injuries a year. I mean, they weren't good. They were racked with injuries. He came in and added more science, basically did a lot of testing, came up with these like individualized programs. He dropped the hamstring injury rate to like 3 a year. Ended up winning a couple Super Bowls with the team. Went on to become the MLB's first performance director. And then now he does his own thing. He has this facility called P3, and they have a contract with the NBA. So what they do, and a few other leagues too, what they do is players come in and he attaches all these reflective markers all over their body, and he has them run through all the movements they would in a game. Meanwhile, there's cameras capturing these movements. And then that gets fed into an algorithm so they can see how the player moves and compare it to other players and basically be like, look, the way that you jump, the way your whatever knee caves in, that's putting you at a 60% risk of having an injury this year. So this can also tell you what's interesting, some of the promises in your game. So for example, I don't know if you're into basketball at all, but Luka Doncic, guy for the Mavericks, Rookie of the Year, NBA All-Star. He started coming to P3 when he was, I think, 15. And he was a decent player then. They did all this stuff, and they go, Luka, we have bad news for you. You can't jump to save your life. But we also have some good news. You are off the charts at decelerating or slowing down. Like you're very, very fast at slowing down. So we want you to develop your game around sprinting, stop, defender careens forward because you can slow down faster than them, shoot. So he developed his game around that, and now he's sort of the future of the NBA. I told you all that to basically tell you that this Marcus Elliott dude, he's obviously into this big data and how can we use that to improve ourselves and improve our performance. But he also understands that not everything that improves an athlete, that improves a human, can be measured. All right. So another thing he does with his friends and players that are interested is this idea that he calls masogi. So this is it's named after an ancient Japanese myth. And the basic idea is that once a year, I'm going to do something really hard. And the way that he defines hard is I have to have a 50-50 shot of finishing it. So that's rule 1. Must be really hard. Rule 2, don't die. And then there's 2 guidelines beyond that. The first guideline is that it has to be something kooky, so something you just make up. And the reason for that is because so much of what we do today is, especially athletically, is comparison shopping. It's like, oh, well, this person ran this distance in this time. I got to do it better than them. So if you just make some weird shit up, it's like it's only you against you, right? And then number 2 is that you don't really brag and boast about it and share whatever you do on social media because, again, it's you for you. It's not so you can get a bunch of pats on the back. So some things that he's done with people is one year they got a 85-pound rock and they walked it 5 miles underneath the Santa Barbara Channel. So the rock was at the bottom of the ocean. They'd sort of dive down, 10, 20 feet, whatever it was, walk 10 yards or 20 yards. Guy would come up, next guy would come down, and after 5 hours, it's like the rock is at point B. So it kind of goes back to that idea of these challenges where you like sort of separate, you go through this trying middle ground, you're like, I'm not gonna be able to do this, what the hell, But by doing it, you get on the other side and you're like, man, I really learned something about myself. So he's done all kinds of different strange, weird, kooky challenges with different people. And a lot of them are athletes who are really clutch performers in the playoffs. It's like the guys that go through this because once they've gone through that, it's like now all of a sudden the stress of that playoff game is perhaps not as heavy because you've had these times where you're like, man, this is really, really crazy and trying against me, So you come out on the other end of that improved. So I think that doing something like that can be a good thing for the average person because going back to that rule 1 is that it has to be hard, which is defined by a 50-50 shot of finishing it. It's like my 50% is different than your 50% is different than your 50% is different than your 50%. So if you're the type of person who, I don't do shit, I'm super lazy, the farthest I've ever run is 3 miles. Well, you could ask yourself, okay, could I run 3 miles again? Well, probably. Could I do 6? That would be pretty tough, but yeah, I think. What about 9? Ooh, I don't know about 9. Go find out if you can, man. By going through that, finishing it, you're going to learn that you maybe had a gear that you didn't realize was there, and that'll help you sort of move on. And the nice thing is, like, you don't have to over-prepare. Doesn't have to be a massive production. It's just like they do it once a year. And again, it's one of those things that, like, he's like, look, I can't measure this.
Do they have a time where they do it?
Just once a year.
But they have like a this is the week to be in hell?
No, I don't think so.
Just randomly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've started doing this in my own life since I got back to the Arctic and met him. And I'm, trained as a science journalist. I read a shitload of studies. I read probably 1,000 studies going into this book, talk to researchers all the time who are, nerds at the NIH and that type of thing. And doing this, I can tell you, man, there are certain things about being a human that you just can't measure. And it's like a feeling you get when you go out and you do these hard things. Like, that'll teach you a lot about yourself, and that goes a long way.
Like, what have you done since these?
So I'm breaking a guideline here, but I'll talk about it. So, for example, this was about a month ago. So the farthest I'd ever run in my life was 16 miles. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do some sort of outdoor trail run. How far should I go? I'm like, could I do double that, 32 miles? And I'm like, I think I probably could. If I got, I think I probably could. What about triple that? Fuck, I don't know if I could do triple that. So I'm like, hey, let's go find out. So I went out to Red Rock Canyon in Las Vegas. And there's a trail that's 12 miles. It's called the Grand Circle Trail. And there's quite a bit of elevation change. And I ran that thing 4 times. First 2 laps were like, okay, I got this. Third lap, I had a freaking breakdown. I'm like, fuck this. I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, I just can't do this. We're just going to call it quits after. And I got back on that 3rd lap and it was like, okay, we're gonna make a go at the fourth one, just whatever. And on that fourth one on the way up, like I literally had this moment where I'm like running over this. I mean, the trail is unbelievable because you go through all this red rock and just beautiful, beautiful country, and especially because you're changing elevation, so like the environment is changing as you do it. I had one of those moments where literally like I started giggling and laughing and just being like, holy shit, I am thankful to be alive. Like this is unbelievable. And I get done with that and it's like, just run like 48 miles, dude. The farthest you've ever run is like 16. It's like,
How many hours?
took me 10 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, the total elevation change was 13,000 feet. So, I mean, look, that's the 50-50 thing. It's like, if it was like Cam Haines, he'd be like, 48, you little bitch, you know?
Right.
But for me, it's like, I didn't know I could do that.
What do you attribute? What caused you to like cruise in the fourth one? Like what was that feeling? What gave you that extra energy? Was it knowing that you were going to do it? Was it that your body had just accepted the fact that this is just what we're doing, and you're pumped up with endorphins? What do you think it was?
I think it's a combination. I think a lot of things are going on. I think some, again, can't be measured. I think some innate evolutionary machinery gets triggered when we go out and we do challenging things in nature, and we can just do them. And I also think that humans probably evolved to believe they could do a lot less than they're actually capable of. Because if you think about it, if we would have evolved to just have this outsized idea of what we're capable of, we'd be like, yeah, I could definitely do that. Hold my beer, watch this.
Right.
Then you die. Whereas like if we're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. I'm afraid of doing that. I think it's, a little bit too risky. But then when we got put in those real positions of risk, which would have happened, if we could outdo that, we have a better chance at survival over time. You don't want the hold my beer people who are incapable. You want the people who are a little more risk averse, who are actually more capable than they.
That's how your genes pass on.
Yeah.
What do you think there's a mechanism that happens in the mind or in the body where the body realizes like no matter what we think, how we're trying to deter this guy from doing this very difficult thing, he's going to keep doing it. So maybe we need to release.
Just let go.
Or let some endorphins fly. Like there's probably some sort of a biomechanical mechanism in the mind and in the body that allows you to accomplish, like adrenaline, right? Like adrenaline kicks in, you can do things that you can never do without adrenaline.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's something along those lines.
I think so. I think
we know that endorphins get released, right?
Yeah. Endorphins get released. I think some stuff just turns on. I mean, because I don't know if your body necessarily really knows like, oh, we're doing this, 10 miles or 15, 20 miles from the Las Vegas Strip. It doesn't know. It just thinks, oh, we're running really fucking far. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. We got to keep on going here, So, yeah, I don't know, man, but it's powerful.
So you're going to continue to do this every year?
Yeah.
Do you think you'll hunt again?
Yes, I will.
You going to do it with Donnie every time, or what are you going to do?
I don't know. I'll probably do some on my own. I got to, Donnie's a nice dude. He set me up with a really sweet bow, but I got it right before COVID, so I was like trying to take lessons, and then all of a sudden it was like shut down.
That's a difficult way to do it.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
Have you practiced at all?
A little bit, but I've also heard everyone be like, you're going to develop really bad habits, dude. So I'm kind of on the fence. What do you think?
Well, there's a place in Vegas where you can go and take lessons. What is it called? There's an archery store in Vegas that I've been to. I want to say Performance Archery, but that's San Diego. That's it. Thank you very much. Impact Archery. I've been there before with John Dudley. They can steer you in the right track. They can give you some lessons. There's people there that can show you how to do it right. But yeah, you need someone who's showing you how to execute correctly, and then you have to understand like there's a lot of steps that happened in. It's one thing to pull the trigger on a target when there's no pressure.
Right.
Like you're standing in front of a target and you're just trying to hit the bullseye. That's not easy. There's a whole nother thing that happens when your body's under pressure.
Yeah.
There's shotiq.com. There's a guy named Joel Turner. I think that's his website. I'm pretty sure. And he's dedicated this course. He's created a course. He used to train snipers. There it is. I've taken his lessons. I've studied his videos. Cool. But it's all about dealing with target panic. And there's target panic for archers that are competitive archers, and then there's target panic. But he goes into the psychology of it, like what actually happens in the mind and what it is about it. Oh, look, there's me. Look, scroll down.
Is that you?
Look at that.
Dude, that's a monster.
Yeah, that's an elk I shot in Utah.
Wow.
And directly learned what happened to that. Because of his videos. That helped me a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What's the main thing you walk away
There's
with?
a difference. There's two different things that happen in the mind. There's open loop thinking and closed loop thinking. I always forget which one is which. But open loop thinking is, I think that's the one you don't want, which is like swinging a baseball bat. Like the bat comes, you just swing. Closed loop thinking is executing a process where you have like a very specific shot process. Like I have a whole routine that I go through in my head, and Joel has a series of things that he has you recite. Like for him is, he's got like, I think it's 3 or 4 different things like that you recite in your head to keep you present. So instead of just giving in to this panic, am I getting this open loop, closed loop thing right? I fuck it up all the time. I would think that I know it by now. But the idea is that you're in control of the entire process. You're not allowing yourself to spaz out. And a lot of times when you're drawing on an animal, and it could have easily happened to you with the rifle shot on the caribou as well.
Yeah. Like
you panic and you just pull the trigger like you want it to be over. The anxiety is so intense that when you have the crosshairs on the animal, you just want it to be over. With archery, it's even more intense because you never have a rest. You're never sitting on something. Like with a rifle, you could have sticks, like a shooting sticks, where the rifle's sitting on that, and you're pressed against your body, and it's not moving. You can just squeeze, boom.
Yeah.
And if it's a good rifle and it's zeroed in, you're gonna make a good shot as long as you don't flinch. But people do flinch, and with archery, they flinch a lot. Because in archery, you're drawing back, you're holding the bow, and you're holding everything.
Yeah, because that's heavy.
Yes.
It's like a heavy pull.
And you're also trying to execute what they call a surprise shot. So you don't want to hit the trigger. You kind of want to pull back with your back muscles and have the shot break without you even knowing exactly when it's going to happen.
Okay.
So all I'm doing is I'm concentrating on the reticle. I'm concentrating on the little dot that's on my sight, and I'm concentrating on making sure the bubble's in place. So the bubble's in the center, meaning that my bow is level. And then I'm concentrating on relaxing my front shoulder. I got all these things I go through, and then I'm concentrating on squeezing with my back muscles. And then something my friend Remy told me once, Remy Warren, he said, it sounds corny. He goes, but this is what I do. I become the arrow. You want the arrow to go to a specific spot. Don't just think that's the spot I want it to hit. Be the arrow. Like be that arrow. So as you're drawing back, you are that arrow. You're thinking entire like you're that arrow.
Yeah. And
you're going to that spot. That way there's no deviation from this plan of hitting exactly where you want to hit.
That's interesting.
And even then it's hard. And then I practice virtually every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I take a couple days off sometimes if I get sore or tired or I'm too busy, but I practice a lot.
Yeah.
And you have to. And when I'm practicing like the months up until like if I'm hunting in September, July, August, September, I'm doing it every day.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking every shot is an elk. Every shot, I'm seeing the animal walking between the trees. There's a gap. There's a spot. It stops, and I have to just be calm in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that's why it's so rewarding, right? Like every single day you're putting work in, and then when you actually get out into the wild, like you're putting a lot of physical work in. I mean, hunting is challenging, man.
Well, mountain hunting is the most challenging because
Yeah.
you actually have to be in shape too. So I do
Totally.
all this crazy cardio
Yeah.
just to get in shape. In order to do that, I do a lot of squats. I do a lot of
man.
I have a Stairmaster, one of those stair mills.
Yeah.
I do a lot of those, and I do it sometimes with a weight vest
Yeah.
on.
That's cool. One of
Yeah.
the things that I found really interesting is like after packing that caribou out, I started thinking about, like I was telling you about, exercise. And when you look at humans, we're actually pretty damn athletically pathetic. and that is not my language. I stole
Yeah.
that from a Harvard anthropologist who studies physical activity. You compare us to other animals, we're very slow. We're not that strong. We're good at two things. We're good at running long distances in the heat and carrying. We're the only animals who can carry. Most other animals, they got to grab something with their mouth and they can't drag it far because that's inefficient. So these Harvard scientists I talked to, I mean, they think that doing the activities that we evolved to do, that we're uniquely built to do, can have a lot of benefits. So I started looking into this idea of carrying, and it really shaped what we became. Like, this is why we have really strong grips. It's why we have sort of relatively shorter torsos that are really strong, longer legs. It's why we don't have much fur and why we sweat to cool ourselves. So you probably have heard the idea of that we're born to run, right? But we're actually, I argue in the book, probably more so born to carry. We did it a lot more. Anytime, I mean, we evolved to run so we could run down animals slowly but surely in the heat. It's called persistence hunting. So we would chase an animal for 10 miles, 20 miles. We'd sort of slowly run. We'd bump it and it would stop. It would sprint and then pant, and eventually the animal would topple over from heat exhaustion because we're really good at cooling ourselves. So then we'd have to cut it up, carry it all the way back to camp. And as gatherers, we evolved to just walk out in our environment, find stuff to eat, and carry it back to camp, right? Now you think about exercise today, it's like everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people run, right? Running is a relatively common physical activity, probably the most common physical activity. But how many people carry for a workout? Right?
Very few.
Carry weight, very, very few.
There's a few people out there rucking.
Yes, exactly. So I followed up on this, and I went down to Jacksonville, Florida. So there's guys who were special forces soldiers. I mean, they're the only people who have really reintroduced carrying back into their days, right? The military, the fundamental of military fitness is rucking. It's their main form of fitness, and it's really sort of turned those guys into some of the fittest people in the world. You can argue, right? So in Jacksonville, I meet with this guy who's a Green Beret, and he started this company called Go Ruck, and they make these really beautiful backpacks, but that are up to military specs, so they can basically carry more weight than you could ever really, carry yourself. And he's teamed up with some researchers at the Mayo Clinic who are advocating for rucking for a lot of their patients, because when people start walking, like walking is great, but it's not really that hard, Running is good, but at the same time, the injury rate of running is really high, especially for people who are out of shape and who have been sitting a lot. But you put a weighted backpack on a person, it adds an element of strength, and it also increases the cardiovascular demands on the person, but the injury risk is really low. So there's all these amazing benefits to rucking that people just, they don't really think of and they don't really know. It's like this fundamental activity that we can do that's super beneficial. And like I said, injury rate's low, and it doesn't matter. You can basically modulate it based on where you're at physically. So I could go rucking with my mom, right? She could take 5-10 pounds, and I could take 50. We'd go the same pace, have a conversation, and we're getting the same effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I've added that definitely into my routine, and I think it's helpful, and especially, for hunting. It's like that's the foundation of getting from point A to point B. Like, you're always carrying stuff.
Yeah, there's actually a company called Outdoorsman's, and they make this pack that's specifically designed. It's a pack frame that has a weight lifting. You have a post where you would put plates on it.
Yeah.
They have a pack. What the fuck is it called again? I have one too. I'm trying to remember the name of it. but it's like a legit backpack. So like the outdoorsmen they're pretty famous for their backpacks. They make like a really good pack for carrying out animals, because it's the company's entirely geared around hunting.
Yeah.
And so they have this what the fuck is the name of it? Atlas, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
So this Atlas trainer has a post on the back of it. You could slide a 45-pound plate. You could put 2 plates on there. So you could have 90 pounds in your back and bolt that sucker down.
Wow.
And then go for a run or a walk, rather, with a real backpack on. So that's it right there.
Oh, that's cool.
See how it works like that? So you could do all your workouts. You could lift weights. You could do all kinds of crazy shit. And you can have, like, serious weight on your back. But you see how the pack itself... Like, that is a rugged backpack.
That's a frame, all right.
They're famous for. I have one of their packs as well. They're famous for being really good at carrying a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So like it's not the lightest pack in the world, but it's really good for carrying weight. The way it distributes the weight on your hips and the way it sits on your shoulders.
Yeah, that makes sense. The GoRuck guys, they sell. Plates that are specifically fitted to their packs. I don't know. It's a great like having to essentially ruck across the Arctic for a month. We get back to the quote unquote airport, which is a shed where the bush planes come in, and I took my pack off and I had to like step up. I don't know, maybe 24 inches or so, like to get into the place. And dude, it was like I levitated up. It's like I was my legs were so damn strong after
that. For just 30 days.
Yeah.
Right?
Like I was in the best shape of my life, and I hadn't been into a gym. I hadn't run. I hadn't done all my normal stuff. And I'm like, I'd also lost weight, right? Because we're not eating that much and we're just moving all day. Like I looked, once I got to the hotel and like went to shower, took my clothes off, I'm like, shit, I look like Conor McGregor at a weigh-in right now, I'm just like... Damn.
Completely slimmed down. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just shredded and just like super, just way fitter than I've ever been. It was fascinating.
Did you think it all to yourself, like, okay, now I have to maintain this?
Well, how?
Yeah, I guess rucking, right?
Yeah. Hello, honey. I'm moving to the Arctic. I've bought us a shed in Kotzebue.
Well, you're in the Vegas area. That's one thing about Vegas people don't realize. Like, there's a lot of trails.
Yeah.
And that, when you get outside the city.
Yeah. No, I still do ruck a lot, to be honest. I'll throw a plate in a pack and I'll just go out into the desert. So I live on the edge of town west by Red Rock Canyon. So I can walk like 3 minutes through my neighborhood, and there's a gate that leads to this whole trail network. So I'll go out there and ruck all the time, and it's awesome because like I said, it feels solid. You just feel you're getting cardio and strength. The SF guy I talked to was like, it's essentially cardio for people who hate running and lifting for people who hate the gym, and we know that there are health benefits to doing both cardio and strength. It's like I feel like we kind of live in this world where the runners are like, oh, lifting, you don't need to lift. Lifting's overrated. And the lifters are like, running sucks. Running's overrated. It's like, no, you look at the data. It's like having a good level of fitness is the number one thing you can do to avoid death. It's like you go down the list of things that kill Americans, fitness fends off all of them. It's like number one is heart disease. People who are fitter, even increasing your running speed from 5 to 6 miles an hour, you'll be 30% less likely to die. So the fitter you are, the farther you are from having heart disease. Fends off some cancers. Then there's accidents. If you are fit, even getting in a car accident, you're more likely to survive. Like it just helps with everything. And we've engineered our world to be like completely effortless. Like we're so damn out of shape now.
Don't you think that what happens when people get involved, whether it's weightlifting or running, they get really interested in the results in whatever particular discipline they're involved in more than overall health? It's not that common that people start thinking, well, I want to do a little bit of weightlifting and a little bit of running. A lot of times they get obsessed with the thing. That's why the runners will say, you don't need to lift weights. Or the weightlifters like, you don't need to run. Like, I just want to get jacked and strong. You know, and the runners are like, look, I'm just trying to put in miles and get my numbers under, X amount of minutes per mile.
Yeah, hit some random time. Yeah, and we get tribal about it. It's like everything, man.
Yeah, we get tribal about it.
Super
yeah.
tribal. It's like, and then all of a sudden, yeah, this way is the only way. I think that's one thing we see. You know, pick anything in life where there's two different ways to do it. The people on the left side are like, no, the other thing sucks, and vice versa. You know, it's just we're tribal creatures, man.
That's real common. It's real common. And it's real common to mock people that do other kind of activities.
Yeah.
What are you, rock climbing, bro?
Yeah.
You know? People get crazy with those things. Like, fucking rock climbing is hard.
Yeah.
All those things are hard. Rocking's hard. Right? You
Yes.
know, lifting weights is hard. All these things are difficult to do, you know, but
That's why it works.
yeah, you should really do a variety of things if you're being wise about it and looking at it in terms of like, I'm trying to engineer a more sound, fitter body that can do a lot of different things that I ask it to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're shooting only for performance, that's not health.
Right.
You know, like people who run a 2-hour marathon, they're not necessarily healthy.
Right.
Like they're healthier than someone who's 600 pounds. Don't get me wrong, but
Right.
you're not going for health, right?
Yeah, if they had to wrestle, it'd be a
Yeah.
real problem.
Yeah, exactly.
When you wrote this book, did you write this book not just to document all these issues that people are having with comfort, but also to give people maybe some feedback or some pointers or some direction in terms of like how to maybe possibly move your life into a better place?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the way that the book is written is I tell this story of this hunt that I did in the Arctic, and that's the overarching narrative. And as I'm facing these specific discomforts we used to face as we evolved, then I sort of peel off and then I investigate each one in different sections, and I talk about different on-the-ground reporting that I did. And at the end, there's always some takeaway. Now, it's not like explicit advice in like a box that's like, okay, here are the steps to do this. But it's all inherent, and you leave knowing, okay, here's how I can weave this back into my life. And I think going back to that idea that our environments have changed so much, you know, it's not like just doing any one of these is going to solve all your problems. Like, yes, it'll be helpful, but it's like we really need to think about how are these different ways that I can weave this stuff throughout my days, weeks, months, and years. Some of this stuff is relatively easy to work in. For example, like even the data on keeping your house colder is really interesting in terms of weight loss and overall calorie burn. And even just things like people are never hungry anymore. Like, let's figure out why you're eating in the first place. And then by reintroducing hunger back into your life, like you're probably going to lose some weight if you can determine, oh, I'm eating because I'm stressed or bored versus, oh, I'm physiologically hungry. Then some of them are a little bit more challenging. Like, we need things that really push back against us. That's something like the Misogi idea I talked about, where it's like, dude, do something epic. Like, you may not think that you can do it. Like, you can do it. It's like freaking humans were hunter-gatherers for 2.5 million years, and now people are like, well, I couldn't go outside for 3 hours. It's like, what the hell are you talking about, man? You know, like we can do a lot more than I think we believe.
The data about keeping your house cold, I mean, it's just basically your body needs to burn off more calories to stay warm, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when you get cold, your internal furnace cranks on, uses calories, and it's a small effect, but over time can have decent results. So one study and scientist I talked to said 64 degrees is the sweet spot. So my wife loves that I found this stat, right? Because now our house is 64 all the time. She's like, I'm freezing my ass off. But
wouldn't you rather just eat less food and stay warm?
I would never like to eat less food. Never.
But you're a thin guy. Like, it seems like you've got it under control in terms of like weight loss or the need to lose weight.
More or less. I've been helped
Did you
along
ever
the way.
seesaw?
Probably so I'm like $170. Probably for a while though, I was 185. And so I was within, what's considered healthy, but I'm still at the higher end of the healthy BMI, and like just from running, my hips would hurt afterwards. And I started working with this dude who's in the book, and his name is Trevor Cashy. I think he's 28 now, but he graduated college, I think when he was 17 or 18, got his PhD when he was 22. I believe.
He was 17 when he graduated college?
He's mega genius. Like, the way I
Jesus.
describe it is like, you know, to say that Trevor's smart is to say that LeBron James is pretty good at basketball. You know, like, I mean, and look, for my work, like, I talk to people at Harvard, people at the NIH, like scientists everywhere. Like, this guy is blow your mind smart, can just unpack arguments.
Imagine you're going to your high school prom and he's graduating from college and you're both the same age.
I know, right?
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, it's and it pisses me off because I'm older than him, obviously, and I'm just like, man, you're just so much smarter than me. This sucks.
So anyway, what did he?
He's interesting because when he was in college, he started working with a lot of athletes and just like everyday people, helping them lose weight. Like, he was in a lab doing cancer research, but found that he just was really into strength sports. So he has like a couple national strength records and was working with people like ultra marathoners, other strongmen, and was just really damn good at it. So now he has this nutrition company he calls Trevor Cashy Nutrition. And his approach is really interesting because he doesn't really give a damn what you eat. He cares why you eat, really. Because most people, he says, like, look, you can eat a lot of different ways. You could pick any random diet, and if you follow that diet, you're going to lose weight. But the question is, well, why the hell don't people follow diets? That comes down to the why, is we often eat because we can't mitigate stress, because we're bored, and your body also, as it loses weight, it starts to pull all these little tricks to try and keep you at a higher weight. Because back in the past, it's like your body losing weight was a threat, right? So things like it'll increase your hunger signaling. It'll slow down your metabolism. So this is why around 5 weeks, people usually hop off diets and fall back into their normal patterns because they can't deal with that discomfort of hunger. And they often fall into intense cravings that aren't really physiological cravings. It's just your mind being like, Snickers, 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 you know? So he works with people to help them figure out, how do I discern the difference between, you know, this sort of, I guess in the book I call it real hunger versus reward hunger. And then how can I become aware of what I eat? Because people don't know how much they eat. You look at research and people like miscalculate their daily intake by hundreds, sometimes even thousands of calories.
Sort of similar to miscalculating the amount of screen time they use.
Exactly. So there's this one famous study that found it looked at overweight people who said that they could not lose weight despite eating just 1,000 calories a day. Well, they went in and they did precise measurements and tracking, and the people were eating 2,000 calories. Right? So this is like saying, well, whoops, I ate a half a pizza and I totally forgot. I didn't realize it. But this even happens with everyday people. So on average, people who are at a normal BMI, they tend to miscalculate by 300 to 400 calories a day. People who are overweight, they tend to miscalculate by about 700 to 800. So people just don't know how much they eat. And we are wired to overcompensate and eat more, right? More food has always made sense throughout all of time. So if you can get people aware of like what is an actual portion, how much food do I actually need, how do I just become more aware of not only what I'm eating but also all my other habits, that seems to move the dial for people. He's got I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like he's helped people lose like 200,000 something pounds. I mean, it's crazy. And he works with everyone from, you know, people this is their last stop on the quote unquote diet train. The next thing is going to be bariatric surgery to he's worked with strong men who have been, you know, champions and ultra runners and stuff like that. So he worked for, I can't remember, one of the Eastern countries' Olympic team for a while too and helped them win some medals. So he's kind of all over the board. Most interesting though, this doesn't have anything to do with food, is when he was in college. He's a super genius, I told you, knows everything about chemistry. He got recruited by the Hells Angels to help them make meth, more or less. Like, this is one of the ways he helped himself get through college, which is like totally wacky.
What?
Yeah, man. Like, he's like a real life Heisenberg. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's
How much did he make selling meth?
I don't know, enough to get through college. I didn't ask him for the exact figure, but yeah. And it was
and then he said, "All right, guys, I graduated. Thank you. Bye."
yeah, they had sort of a falling out, I guess. And
I wonder why.
Yeah.
He's cooking this fucking amazing
Yeah.
meth.
So he didn't actually cook it, but he would meet with them and be like, here's the problem. Here's exactly how you have to do it. Here's the problem. Here's how you have to make the steps more efficient. You have too many steps in the chemical process. By removing it, you're going to like whatever. So he'd meet up with these guys like it.
And they wanted him to keep going, obviously.
Yeah. And then it didn't go well. They at one point accused him of ripping them off or giving them bad information. And he goes, no, you just didn't follow it. That's your problem. And he's interesting because he grew up kind of in a somewhat broken home. So as a teen, he had some issues with like depression. And he's like, dude, I didn't even really care. Like, all right, kill me, whatever, like fuck off. And eventually they just left him alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's rare.
Trippy dude.
Wow. Figuring out how the fuck does he even know how to make meth? Was he making his own meth?
No, just he's a chemist. Like
Right,
he
but it
really
was-
understands.
But I would imagine when you're telling the Hells Angels how to correctly make meth, there's got to be a little bit of trial and error there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Meaning he probably made it a little bit himself, and maybe that's how he got through college by the time he was 17.
Could have. Who knows?
Might have been a little. I mean, right? Like a lot of people take Adderall.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
It's not that far off from meth.
No, it's really not. I
He's
guess.
a meth head. Your friend's a meth head. That's what I'm trying to say. Isn't it funny how talking about food makes you hungry? I'm hungry now.
Oh no.
We're talking about all this food. Well, I'm fine. I'm not trying to lose weight, but I'm hearing all this food talk. I'm like, damn, I fucking could eat right now.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem. It's I've had a couple people on that have had pretty dramatic weight loss. One of them being Action Bronson, who's a chef, and Ethan Suplee. How do you say his last name? Suplee. Who's an actor who's lost more than 270 pounds.
Wow.
I mean, he was enormous at one point in time, and now he looks great. But we were
That's
talking
awesome.
about food, and one of the problems with being addicted to food is that everyone has to eat. Like, if you're addicted to gambling, you don't have to go to a casino
Right.
to stay alive, but you need to eat to stay alive. So if you're
Yeah.
addicted to food, like, fuck, that is such a mind game you're playing all the time.
I've thought about that. What did they do to? I mean, how do they mitigate that?
Fucking stay strong.
Yeah.
Stay gold, pony boy. I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
you just got to stay strong. I mean, there's really no easy way out of it.
Yeah.
You have to just decide this is what you do. And in Ethan's case, Ethan had gone through many ups and downs. Like he had even had a bunch of skin removed and then gained another 100 pounds. So
Wow.
yeah. So he had gone on that yo-yo
Yeah.
many times until, and this is over a 20-year period of losing weight.
Wow.
But he's done it now. I mean, he looks fucking incredible now. It's amazing.
That's amazing.
And for Bronson, he started during COVID because he has a child, and he realized that a lot of people were saying that obesity is a real problem during COVID, and he also realized he was just way too fat and out of shape, and he was just so unhealthy, and he wanted to be there for his wife and his child, and he just made a conscious decision that I'm going to be a healthier person. And he's a chef too, which is also kind of crazy because likes fantastic food, but he's lost 130 pounds just this year, and I worked out with him. We took him to the On It gym, and he looked great. It's
Really?
amazing. He gets after it, and he
I
does it
love
every
that.
day. He works out every day.
That's
every
so
day.
cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like our food system is set up in such a way in our lives overall that, I mean, it's a wonder that not more than 70% of people are overweight. It's like
Right.
the food that we have now being so ultra processed and calorie dense, like it sort of preys on these internal mechanisms we have where it's like you get a shot of dopamine from eating this ultra processed stuff, and it doesn't fill you up. It's so calorie dense. I think this is where thinking about the type of food you're eating and like how do you control hunger, it's like having foods that are less processed, we know is you're going to be more filled up on fewer calories, and that seems to help people. It's like there's a reason why people didn't become overweight or obese until about 100 years ago.
Well, it was also difficult to get food.
Yeah.
That's a big
Yeah.
issue. But foods that are healthy, whether it's salads or grass-fed meat, and like you don't gorge on those. You gorge on pasta and ice cream.
Yeah.
And cake.
Totally.
That stuff you can't get enough cake. You start eating cake and you just want to, it's so
Yeah,
good. The
dude.
frosting, because there's no place in nature where sugar comes in that form.
No.
So your body gets that. You're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you have 1,000 pounds of cake in your face.
Yeah. Do you know the only form of just pure sugar in nature?
What is it?
Honey.
Oh.
To get that, you have to climb up a tree and get in a big ass fight with some bees.
But honey also has like some medicinal properties to it.
Yeah.
It's actually good for you.
Yeah.
And there's actually some thought that honey, dependent upon the area that it's in, can help. This might be total woo-woo horseshit. Maybe we need to Google this now that I'm thinking about it.
But the allergy thing?
That it has some protectants from the area, from the pollen in the area in which the bees are processing this honey.
Yeah.
You've heard that too?
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's legit or not either.
I don't know if it's legit.
But yeah, so the Hadza, that honey is like their prized food, right? Because
Yeah.
it's calorie dense, and so when you eat that, you get this nice shot of dopamine because it's so calorie dense. And nowadays we're like just swimming in foods that are more calorie dense than honey.
Here it says, but these results haven't been consistently duplicated in clinical studies. Okay, honey has been anecdotally reported to lessen symptoms in people with seasonal allergies. The results have not been consistently duplicated in clinical studies. The idea isn't so far-fetched, though. Honey has been studied as a cough suppressant and may have anti-inflammatory effects. I think it's also good for people that have like cuts and skin injuries. And
Yeah.
it was also used back in the day to preserve food.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they think that's when humans ate a lot of psychedelic mushrooms and they wanted to preserve them, they would do one of two things. They'd either dry them out or they would preserve them in honey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Interesting.
Yeah, well, honey there's also a very specific type of honey that is a psychedelic drug. There's like a psychedelic honey that's very difficult to get, and it's blue honey. Yeah, there it is.
Oh wait,
Oh,
didn't we
no,
talk
this
about
is a
that
different-
one?
this is a different honey.
Yeah. I just as
Yeah.
you were saying it, I remembered
Yeah.
we talked about it.
That's that's the honey that you that's preserving psychedelic mushrooms in honey. But there's a type of honey that the way these bees gather the pollen, that they're somehow or another getting pollen from some plant that has some sort of a psychoactive ingredient in it.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh,
Mad
wow.
honey, known to be a powerful hallucinogen and recreational drug, as well as being ascribed many medicinal features. The honey is thought to be effective in treating everything from hypertension and diabetes to poor sexual performance when taken in small doses. Holla. Himalayan bees. Yeah, and
Man.
they get it. But look at how they get it. It's really wild. They get it off a cliffside.
Oh,
See how they get it? Like there's some wild. See how they do it?
That's crazy.
Yeah, so these guys have to get this fucking honey. They have to climb up the side of a fucking mountain, and then they have to, get the shit stung out of them while they get this stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Look how
Well,
it grows.
Thank God it's on a cliff. I was thinking, what if the bears get into that thing, man? They're just-
Tripping
yeah.
balls. Yeah, wild. I wonder how you get that stuff. It's in Nepal. Think you can get it here?
Yeah, I remember the last time we talked about this. I think we looked it up. It's not easy to get, but you can get.
Oh,
it.
look at
So,
that
like,
dude's fingers. Scroll down. Look at his fingers where he's been jacked by the bees.
Oh,
Yikesies. Yeah. Just fucked up.
Ooh.
Covered in honey and swollen fingers. But later on, tripping balls.
Yeah, you can buy it. It's not cheap, but you can buy it.
Oh, yeah. You can buy mad honey.
There you
All right.
go.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
I don't know if they ship it, but you can buy it.
Yeah, right? Like, what is it legal?
I don't
Well,
know.
there's some psychedelic drugs that are still legal. They fucked up and they slipped through, like salvia, which is one of the most potent. It's for whatever reason, they never caught it.
Oh, interesting.
Salvia divinorum is crazy stuff, and you used to be able to buy it in head shops.
Wow. Yeah, what's interesting is like going back to this idea of challenges, like even Native American tribes, when they would go get the peyote, it was often like there was a physical ceremony that went into that. It was
Yeah.
a long hike to go down to that area that it grew, and it became like a ritual, like almost a religious practice, right? So it was like this physical trial they'd go through to get it and then bring it back up. So it became this overall like life-changing thing, you know? It was
Yeah.
like marrying the physical with the mental and having to like get through things.
Yeah, like the ayahuasca rituals that they'll have in the jungle and
Yeah.
different rites of passage. Yeah, I think for a lot of young people, there's this weird thing that happens as you become an adult where you're like, okay, am I an adult now?
Yeah.
Am I an adult now? Do I have to wait a week?
Yeah.
Now I'm adult, but I feel the same. When do I become a fucking adult?
Yeah.
But if you do go through some sort of a rite of passage, it would make sense that there would be, especially if it's a difficult thing, that you would feel like you had crossed over and you'd become whole. You'd become a new thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We don't have that. I mean, I don't know what the closest thing to compare it to that we do today. You know, it's like
Nothing.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like it's not getting your driver's license.
It's not graduating college because then
No.
you're in debt and you feel fucked over.
Yeah, totally.
Like, where's the jobs?
Yeah, exactly.
I think difficult things, you know, whatever those difficult things are, whether it's running marathons or, you know, something where you can accomplish very significant goals, where you are pushed, and that these aren't easy accomplishments. You're breaking through some new area of your fortitude where you recognize that you do have capabilities beyond what you thought before you did this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
that crazy run you went on, like
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah, I think look at Joseph Campbell. I'm going to mess up this quote, but in his Hero with a Thousand Faces, he's got this line that's like, when we go out and think we're slaying another, we're actually slaying ourselves. When we go out into discomfort, we're actually coming into the center of our own existence. So it's like we don't go out and do these things like for others at all. It's like this is 100% you becoming this different, more capable, confident person, you know?
And that's what we're missing.
Yeah.
Did you do the audiobook?
I did.
You did, so that's good. Thank
Yeah.
God. God, I hate it when somebody else reads someone's book. Especially you got a good voice, like solid.
Oh, good.
Good to read an audiobook. You know, if you have like some weird way of talking, it would be an issue.
Yeah.
Even then, I'd
Yeah.
want to hear it from the guy.
It was more, well, one, it was more challenging than I thought. And two, the producer was hilarious because apparently I have certain words and phrases that are, you know, the generations of whatever it is, Easter generations from the sticks in Idaho. And I'd say them wrong and he'd be like, hold up. Like at one point I'm reading
What
this.
words?
You want to hear an embarrassing one?
Yeah. Do you say especially?
No, it wasn't that. I think it might actually be worse. I'm going through and I have a reference to Mozart in the book, but I'm
Yeah.
going through and I just see it Mozart. And so I'm like, you know, blah, 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 Mozart. And he just goes, hold up. He goes, it's Mozart. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Mozart is how I would say it. Do you say Mozart?
I wouldn't
I might.
give that a strong pronunciation on the T there.
Mozart.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would say that.
Yeah, Mozart. but
And
it's
now
spelled
I have to
M-O-Z.
think
And
that I would say
yeah.
it correctly, but I probably wouldn't have. I probably would have said Mozart.
Yeah, and then I got in the studio the next day. He goes, you know, did you listen to some Chopin when you got home?
Ah, what a dick.
Oh yeah, he was a funny dude though. Yeah, it was an interesting experience for sure.
Well, listen, man, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much for coming in here.
Yeah, man, that was fun.
So your book, The Comfort Crisis, it's available right now.
It is.
You can get it. You can get it on audio. You can get it on regular book if you're a masochist. You want
Yeah.
to sit down and torture yourself.
Exactly.
But thank you very much, man. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you, Joe.
I enjoyed it. All right. Bye, everybody.